The fog clung to the earth like a shroud, swallowing the narrow road that twisted through the blackwood forest. Sister Agnes, barely 25, sat rigid in the back of a rattling taxi, her fingers knotted around a worn rosary. Her pale face, framed by a novice's veil, reflected in the grimy window, her green eyes wide with something between dread and determination. The driver, a grizzled man with a cigarette dangling from his lips, kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, his unease palpable. "You sure you wanna go up there, miss?" he muttered, his voice rough as gravel. "St. Etheldra's ain't no place for a young thing like you. Folks round here say the devil himself walks those halls." Agnes forced a smile, though her stomach churned. "God is my shield," she said softly, but the words felt hollow, like a prayer whispered in a storm. She'd heard the rumors, whispers of vanishings, of nuns driven mad, but the convent was her last refuge, a place to escape the ghosts of her past. The taxi lurched to a stop before a towering iron gate, its bars twisted into shapes that might have been angels or demons, rusted by time. Beyond it, St. Etheldra's convent loomed, a Gothic beast of blackened stone and jagged spires, its windows like empty eyes staring down. The wind carried a low moan, and Agnes shivered, clutching her suitcase, a battered leather thing holding all she owned. She stepped out, the fog curling around her ankles like ghostly fingers. The driver didn't wait, peeling away with a screech of tires, leaving her alone. The gate creaked as she pushed it open, the sound echoing like a scream in the silence. The path to the convent was lined with gnarled trees, their branches clawing at the sky. As she walked, she felt a prickling on her neck, as if someone, or something, watched from the shadows. The massive oak doors of the convent groaned as she knocked. They swung inward, revealing a cavernous foyer lit by a chandelier of dripping candles. The air was heavy with incense and dust, the walls adorned with faded tapestries of martyred saints, their faces contorted in agony. Mother Superior, a woman of 60 with a face like carved marble, stood waiting, her black habit absorbing the light. "Sister Agnes," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "You are late. Obedience begins with discipline." Agnes bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Mother. The fog delayed us." "Excuses are the cracks through which sin seeps," Mother Superior snapped. "You will join us for Vespers, then begin your duties in the library tomorrow. The Lord's work waits for no one." As they crossed the foyer, Agnes's eyes caught a staircase spiraling into darkness, its banister carved with serpents. A faint sound, like a child's sob, drifted from above, but Mother Superior didn't pause. Agnes's heart pounded, her rosary beads digging into her palm. She glanced at a locked door to her right, its frame etched with symbols that seemed to pulse in the candlelight. Whatever lay beyond, she thought, was not meant for her eyes. The library of St. Etheldra's was a labyrinth of shadows, its towering shelves groaning under the weight of centuries-old books. Agnes stood at its center the next morning, a single lantern casting a feeble glow across the room. The air was thick with the scent of leather and decay, and every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. She'd been tasked with cataloguing the convent's collection, a job Mother Superior had described as a test of devotion. But to Agnes, it felt like exile. She moved through the stacks, her fingers trailing over spines embossed with Latin titles. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of wax from her lantern. As she reached for a book, a cold breath grazed her neck, and a whisper slithered into her ear, "Agnes." She spun, her heart lurching. The aisle was empty, but the shadows seemed to shift, as if hiding something just out of sight. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. No answer came, only the echo of her words, mocking her fear. Steadying herself, she turned back to the shelf and noticed a book out of place, its cover bound in cracked leather and stamped with a symbol, a serpent devouring its tail. She pulled it down, dust clouding the air. The title, in faded gold, read Liber Asmodeus. Her Latin was rusty, but the name sent a chill through her. Asmodeus, the demon of lust and wrath. She opened the book, its pages brittle as dead leaves. The text was a mix of Latin and an older, stranger script, accompanied by illustrations that made her stomach twist: a horned figure with burning eyes, a nun wreathed in flames, a circle of robed figures chanting under a blood-red moon. One passage, underlined in crimson ink, caught her eye. "The chain is forged by sacrifice, broken by the pure. When the vessel opens, Asmodeus shall rise." The lantern flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Agnes gasped, clutching the book to her chest. Something moved behind her, a rustle of fabric, a soft laugh. She fumbled for the lantern, relighting it with shaking hands. The light revealed nothing, but the air felt heavier, as if the room itself were breathing. She shoved the book back onto the shelf, her pulse racing. This was no ordinary text, it was a warning, or worse, an invitation. As she fled the library, the whisper followed her, curling through the corridors, "You cannot run." That night, in her spa cell, Agnes knelt before a wooden crucifix, praying for strength. But the words felt empty, drowned out by the memory of the book and the voice that knew her name. She slipped the rosary from her neck, its beads warm from her skin, and tucked it under her pillow. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of a figure in a red habit, its face a void, beckoning her into the dark. The chapel of St. Etheldra was a sanctuary of cold stone and stained glass, its air thick with the drone of evening prayers. Agnes knelt among the sisters, her habit scratching her skin, her mind still reeling from the library. The other nuns chanted in unison, their voices a low, mournful hum, but Agnes's lips barely moved. She couldn't shake the image of the Liber Asmodeus or the whisper that had chased her from the stacks. The chapel doors burst open, silencing the chant. A man strode in, Father Benedict, 32, with a priest's collar half hidden under a leather jacket. His dark hair was tousled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his eyes carried a mix of defiance and weariness. The sisters stirred, some with disapproval, others with curiosity. Agnes's breath caught. He was unlike any priest she'd ever seen. Mother Superior rose, her face a mask of contempt. "Father Benedict," she said, her voice dripping with ice. "The Vatican sends you unannounced. What is your purpose?" Benedict smirked, unfazed. "Let's just say Rome's heard whispers about your little convent. Strange deaths, missing nuns. I'm here to make sure the devil isn't squatting in your pews." A gasp rippled through the sisters. Agnes stared, her heart quickening. His words were bold, almost reckless, but his eyes, sharp and searching, locked onto hers for a moment, and she felt exposed, as if he could see the fear she'd buried. After prayers, Agnes lingered in the corridor, her hands clasped to still their trembling. Benedict approached, his boots echoing on the stone floor. He stopped close, too close, his presence warm and dangerous. "You're the new one," he said, his voice low, teasing. "Sister Agnes, right?" You look like you'd seen something you shouldn't." Agnes swallowed, her throat dry. "This place, it's not what I expected." He leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "It never is. Stick with me, sister. I've danced with worse shadows than these." He offered her a cigarette, its tip glowing faintly. Smoking was forbidden, a sin in the convent's rigid code, but the act felt like a dare. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, a spark of heat passing between them. She hesitated, then tucked it into her sleeve, her cheeks burning. As Benedict walked away, Agnes noticed a sister watching from the shadows, Sister Clara, 28, with a punkish edge to her posture, her habit slightly askew. Clara's eyes were sharp, knowing, and her lips curled into a half-smile. "Careful with that one," Clara said, stepping into the light. Benedict's trouble. "And you? You're already in deeper than you think." Agnes frowned. "What do you mean?" Clara's smile faded. "That book you found? It's not just a book. And this convent? It's built on secrets that bite." Before Agnes could respond, a scream tore through the convent, shrill and raw. It came from the courtyard. The sisters poured out, Agnes and Clara among them, to find a horrific sight. Sister Teresa, a quiet older nun, lay sprawled on the stones, her throat slashed, blood pooling around her like a dark halo. The sisters wailed, crossing themselves, but Agnes's eyes locked onto something clutched in Teresa's hand, a scrap of parchment marked with the serpent symbol from the Liber Asmodeus. Benedict pushed through the crowd, his face grim. He knelt beside the body, prying the parchment free. His eyes met Agnes's, and in that moment, she knew, whatever was happening here, they were already entangled in it, whether they liked it or not. The courtyard of St. Etheldra was a frozen tableau of grief and fear, the sisters' prayers rising like smoke into the dawn. Sister Teresa's body lay under a coarse blanket, her blood seeping into the cobblestones, a dark stain that seemed to pulse in the weak light. Sister Agnes stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands trembling, the serpent-marked parchment Father Benedict had taken from Teresa's hand burning in her memory. The air was thick with the scent of iron and incense, and the sisters' whispers burst like flies. "Suicide," some said. "God's judgment," others hissed. But Agnes knew better. No one slashed their own throat with such precision. Mother Superior's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Sisters, return to your duties. Sister Teresa's soul is with the Lord. We will not let despair taint our faith." The nuns dispersed, their habits rustling like dead leaves, but Agnes lingered, her eyes locked on Benedict. He stood apart, the parchment now tucked into his jacket, his face a mask of grim focus. Clara, ever watchful, nudged Agnes's elbow. "Don't stare too long," Clara murmured, her voice low, laced with a wry edge. "Mother Superior's got eyes like a hawk, and she doesn't like her flock getting cozy with priests." Agnes flushed, tearing her gaze away. "I wasn't." "Sure you weren't," Clara said, smirking. "Come on. Let's get out of here before we're assigned penance for breathing." They slipped into a side corridor, the stone walls damp and cold, etched with faded crosses. Clara led the way, her steps quick, as if she knew every shadow of the convent by heart. Agnes followed, her mind racing. The Liber Asmodeus, the whisper in the library, Teresa's death, none of it was coincidence. And Benedict, with his sharp eyes and guarded demeanor, seemed to know more than he let on. Clara stopped at a heavy door. It's wood-scarred and bolted. "This leads to the old wing," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "No one's supposed to go in there. Mother Superior says it's unsafe, but I've seen her sneak in at night." Agnes frowned. "What's in there?" "Secrets," Clara said, her eyes glinting. "Want to find out?" Before Agnes could answer, a shadow moved at the corridor's end, a sister, her face half hidden by her veil, watching them. The air grew heavy, and Agnes's skin prickled, as if the walls themselves were leaning closer. The sister turned and vanished, her footsteps silent. "Who was that?" Agnes asked, her voice barely audible. Clara's face darkened. "No one you want to know. Come on, let's move." They hurried back to the main hall, but the sense of being watched clung to Agnes like damp cloth. That night, in her cell, she knelt by her narrow bed, the cigarette Benedict had given her hidden in her sleeve. She didn't smoke it, couldn't bring herself to cross that line, but its weight was a quiet rebellion, a tether to the world beyond these walls. As she prayed, a sound came from the corridor, a slow, deliberate scratching, like nails on stone. She froze, her breath shallow. The scratching stopped, replaced by a faint giggle, high and cruel, that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Agnes clutched her rosary, whispering the Ave Maria, but the words felt like ash. Whatever was in this convent, it wasn't just human. And it knew she was here. The next morning, Agnes found Benedict in the convent's overgrown garden, a tangled maze of thorns and wilted roses. He was crouched by a cracked fountain, examining the parchment from Teresa's hand, its serpent symbol stark against the yellowed paper. The sun was weak, barely piercing the fog, and the garden felt like a graveyard, each leaf heavy with dew and dread. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Agnes said, her voice sharper than she intended. "It's not safe." Benedict looked up, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Worried about me, sister?" "I'm touched." She crossed her arms, ignoring the warmth his voice stirred. "I'm worried about what's happening. Teresa didn't kill herself. You know it." His smile faded, and he stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Yeah, I know. This," he held up the parchment, "is a sigil. Old. Demonic. I've seen it before, in places where faith gets twisted into something else." Agnes's heart sank. "The Liber Asmodeus. It has the same symbol." Benedict's eyes narrowed. "You've been poking around, haven't you?" "That book's dangerous, Agnes. It's not just a relic, it's a key." "To what?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "To something that should stay locked. This convent's got history, and not the kind they teach in catechism. I need to see that book." Agnes hesitated. Helping him meant defying Mother Superior, risking everything she'd come here to rebuild. But Teresa's bloodied body flashed in her mind, and she nodded. "Tonight. After campaign. Meet me in the library." He held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them, a mix of trust and danger. "You're braver than you look," he said, then turned back to the fountain, dismissing her. The day dragged, each hour heavy with unease. At campaign, the sisters' chants felt hollow, and Agnes caught Mother Superior watching her, her eyes like twin voids. Clara, sitting nearby, slipped her a note, "Be careful. They are watching." Agnes crumpled it, her pulse quickening. That night, the library was a cavern of shadows, the air thick with the scent of old paper and wax. Agnes lit a single candle, its flame trembling as she pulled the Liber Asmodeus from its shelf. Benedict arrived silently, his presence a jolt of warmth in the cold. They pored over the book, its pages whispering of rituals and sacrifices, of a demon bound by blood and betrayal. "This says the convent was built to trap something," Benedict murmured, tracing a line of Latin. "Asmodeus." But the binding's weakening. Teresa's death was a spark. Agnes's fingers brushed his as they turned a page, and she pulled back, her cheeks burning. "Why me?" she asked. "Why do I hear things? Whispers?" Benedict's eyes softened. "Maybe you're sensitive to it. Or maybe it wants you." Before she could respond, a crash echoed from the stacks. The candles snuffed out, plunging them into darkness. A voice, low, guttural, hissed from the shadows, "You trespass." Agnes grabbed Benedict's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. Footsteps circled them, deliberate and slow, then stopped. The candle flared back to life, revealing an empty room, but a new page in the book was open, marked with a drawing of a nun in a red habit, her eyes bleeding black. The next day, Agnes sought Clara in the convent's kitchen, a dim, smoky room where the air smelled of burned bread and lye. Clara was scrubbing pots, her sleeves rolled up, revealing a faint scar on her wrist, a jagged line that looked deliberate. She glanced at Agnes, her usual smirk gone. "You look like hell," Clara said, tossing a rag aside. "What happened last night?" Agnes hesitated, then recounted the library incident, the voice, the red-habited nun in the book. Clara's face tightened, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting someone to burst in. "You're in over your head," Clara said, her voice low. "That book. It's not just a story. It's a map to something this convent's been hiding for centuries. What do you know about it?" Agnes pressed, stepping closer. "You've been dropping hints, Clara. If you're part of this." "I'm not," Clara snapped, then softened. "Not anymore. Look, I came here 5 years ago, running from things. I thought this place was salvation. But it's a cage. And some of the sisters, Mother Superior included, they are not what they seem." Agnes's stomach twisted. "What are they?" Clara leaned in, her voice a whisper. "A circle. They call themselves the Order of the Serpent. They think they can control what's trapped here, but they are wrong. And you, with that book, you're stirring it up." Before Agnes could ask more, the kitchen door creaked open. Sister Ruth, a gaunt nun with hollow eyes, stood watching them. "Mother Superior requests Sister Agnes," she said, her voice flat. "Now." Agnes exchanged a glance with Clara, who mouthed, "Be careful." The walk to Mother Superior's office felt like a march to judgment, the corridors narrowing, the air growing colder. The office was a stark room, its walls lined with books and a single crucifix, its Christ figure missing one hand. Mother Superior sat behind a desk, her hands folded. "Sister Agnes," she said, her tone deceptively calm. "You've been seen with Father Benedict. And you've been in the library, touching things you shouldn't." Agnes's mouth went dry. "I was cataloguing, Mother. As you instructed." "Do not lie to me," Mother Superior said, her eyes boring into Agnes's. This convent is a house of God, but it is also a battlefield. There are forces here you cannot comprehend. Stay away from that book, and from Father Benedict, or you will regret it." Agnes nodded, her heart pounding, but as she left, she felt a shift inside her, fear giving way to defiance. Back in her cell, she found a note slipped under her door, in Clara's jagged handwriting, "Meet me at midnight. Old Wing. Bring Benedict." As the clock struck 12, Agnes stood at the bolted door Clara had shown her, Benedict at her side. The convent was silent, but the darkness felt alive, watching. Clara appeared, a lantern in hand, her face pale but resolute. "Ready to see what they are hiding?" she asked. Agnes nodded, gripping Benedict's hand for a moment before letting go. The door groaned open, revealing a staircase descending into blackness, and as they stepped forward, a distant scream echoed from below, sharp and human, cutting through the night like a blade. The staircase spiraled down into the old wing of St. Etheldra's convent, its stone steps slick with moss and worn smooth by centuries of unseen feet. Sister Agnes clung to the damp wall, her breath shallow, the lantern in Clara's hand casting jagged shadows that danced like spectres. Father Benedict followed close behind, his presence a steady warmth in the suffocating dark, though his silence was heavy with doubt. The scream they'd heard moments ago lingered in Agnes's mind, sharp and raw, a human cry that carried the weight of terror. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the stench of mildew and something metallic, blood, perhaps, or something worse. Clara led the way, her lantern revealing a corridor at the staircase's end, its walls lined with rusted iron grates and sealed doors. "This place hasn't been used in decades," she whispered, her voice tight. "At least, that's what they tell us. But I've seen lights down here, late at night." Agnes's heart pounded. "What are we looking for?" "Proof," Clara said, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "The Order of the Serpent isn't just a bedtime story. They are real, and they are hiding something down here." Benedict snorted softly. "You sound like you've been reading too many Gothic novels, sister. But I'll bite. What's your proof?" Clara shot him a look. "You'll see." They moved deeper, the corridor narrowing until it felt like the walls were closing in. Agnes's fingers brushed a grate, and she recoiled. Its bars were sticky, coated with something dark and viscous. She wiped her hand on her habit, her stomach churning. A faint hum began to rise, not from any one direction but from the stones themselves, a low, dissonant chant that seemed to vibrate in her bones. They reached a door unlike the others, its wood blackened and carved with the serpent devouring its tail symbol from the Liber Asmodeus. Clara hesitated, then pushed it open, revealing a chamber lit by a single torch. The room was circular, its floor inlaid with a mosaic of a horned figure wreathed in flames, Asmodeus, Agnes realized with a shiver. Along the walls hung tattered robes, their red fabric faded but unmistakable, and a stone altar stood at the center, stained with dark, uneven patches. Benedict knelt by the altar, his fingers tracing a Latin inscription. "By blood we bind, by blood we break," he read, his voice grim. "This isn't a chapel. It's a ritual site." Before Agnes could speak, the torch flickered, and a shadow moved across the mosaic, a figure in a red habit, its face obscured, gliding silently toward them. Agnes gasped, grabbing Benedict's arm. Clara swung the lantern, but the light caught nothing. The figure was gone, yet the air grew heavy, pressing against Agnes's chest like a physical weight. "We need to leave," she whispered, her voice trembling. Clara nodded, but as they turned, the door slammed shut with a deafening thud. The hum became a roar, and the mosaic seemed to pulse, its flames writhing. Agnes's rosary burned against her skin, and she clutched it, praying frantically. The door rattled, then swung open, revealing only darkness, but the sense of being watched remained, sharp and malevolent. They fled, the corridor a blur of shadows and fear, until they reached the main convent. Safe in the upper halls, Agnes leaned against a wall, gasping. "What was that?" she demanded. Clara's face was pale. "That was a warning. They know we're looking." Benedict's jaw tightened. "Then we'd better look harder." The next morning, Agnes knelt in the chapel, the cold stone biting into her knees. The sisters' morning prayers droned around her, but she couldn't focus, her mind tangled with images of the red-habited figure and the blood-stained altar. Her faith, once a steady flame, felt like a candle flickering in a storm. She glanced at the crucifix above the altar, its Christ figure staring down with hollow eyes, and for the first time, she felt no comfort, only judgment. After prayers, she slipped into the garden, seeking solitude. The fog was thick, cloaking the roses in grey, and the air carried a faint, sour tang. She found a bench and sat, pulling Benedict's cigarette from her sleeve. She didn't light it, just turned it over in her fingers, its forbidden weight a small act of defiance against the convent's crushing rules. Footsteps crunched behind her, and she hid the cigarette, turning to find Benedict. His leather jacket was damp with mist, his eyes softer than usual, carrying a trace of guilt. "You're up early," he said, sitting beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Couldn't sleep." Agnes shook her head. "Not after last night. That place, it's evil, Benedict. I felt it." He nodded, his gaze distant. "I've seen evil before. In Rome, 5 years ago, I was called to an exorcism. A girl, barely 16. I thought I could save her. I was wrong." His voice cracked, and he looked away. "She died screaming my name." Agnes's chest tightened. She touched his hand, a fleeting gesture, but the warmth of his skin sent a jolt through her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He met her eyes, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them, the fog, the convent, the danger fading. "You're different, Agnes," he said softly. "You see things clearly. That's why it's targeting you." She pulled her hand back, guilt flooding her. "I'm a nun. I took vows. I shouldn't," she trailed off, unable to name the pull between them. Benedict leaned closer, his voice low. "Vows don't stop you from feeling. They just make it hurt more." Before she could respond, a shadow fell over them. Mother Superior stood at the garden's edge, her face a mask of cold fury. "Sister Agnes," she said, her voice slicing the air. "You are needed in the library. Now." Agnes rose, her heart pounding, and followed, feeling Benedict's gaze on her back. In the library, Mother Superior handed her a list of books to catalogue, her eyes never leaving Agnes's face. "You are treading dangerous ground," she said. "Father Benedict is a distraction. And distractions lead to ruin." As Agnes worked alone, sorting dusty tomes, a book fell from a shelf, landing open at her feet. Its pages showed a drawing of a nun in a red habit, her hands dripping blood, and a single word scrawled in the margin, Agnes. She staggered back, her breath hitching, as a laugh echoed through the stacks, soft and mocking. The convent's bell tolled at dusk, summoning the sisters to the refectory for supper, but the mood was grim. Whispers of Therese's death still lingered, and Agnes felt the weight of every glance, as if the sisters sensed her role in stirring the convent's shadows. She sat beside Clara, who picked at her bread, her usual bravado dimmed. "You okay?" Agnes asked, keeping her voice low. Clara shrugged. "Just thinking about last night. That chamber, it's not the only one. There's more down there, Agnes. I've heard things, screams, chants. The Order's planning something." Before Agnes could press her, a commotion erupted at the refectory's entrance. Sister Ruth burst in, her face ashen, her hands trembling. "It's Sister Mary," she cried. She's dead." The sisters surged to their feet, Agnes and Clara among them, following Ruth to the convent's bell tower. The narrow staircase was cramped, the air thick with dust and fear. At the top, Sister Mary's body hung from the bell rope, her neck snapped, her eyes wide and glassy, staring into nothing. Her habit was torn, and clutched in her hand was another scrap of parchment, its serpent symbol stark against the blood-smeared paper. Benedict arrived, pushing through the crowd, his face hard. He pried the parchment free, his eyes scanning it before tucking it into his jacket. "This wasn't suicide," he muttered to Agnes, low enough that only she heard. "The rope's too clean. Someone strung her up." Mother Superior appeared, her presence silencing the sisters' gasps. "A tragedy," she said, her voice steady. Sister Mary was troubled. "We will pray for her soul." Agnes's stomach twisted. Troubled? Mary had been quiet, devout, not suicidal. She glanced at Clara, who gave a subtle nod, her eyes saying what Agnes felt: "This is no coincidence." That night, Agnes, Benedict, and Clara met in the garden, hidden by fog. Benedict spread the two parchments, Therese's and Mary's, on a stone bench. Both bore the serpent symbol, but Mary's had a phrase in Latin, "The pure shall bleed." "It's a ritual," Benedict said, his voice grim. "They're marking victims. And I think they're building to something bigger." Agnes's blood ran cold. The Liber Asmodeus mentioned a pure soul. What if, she couldn't finish, but the fear was clear, what if it's me? Clara gripped her shoulder. "We stop them. Whatever they're planning, we find it first." As they planned their next move, a figure watched from the fog, a nun in a red habit, her silhouette flickering like a flame. Agnes saw her, her breath catching, but when she blinked, the figure was gone. The fog thickened, and a whisper curled through the air, soft and venomous, "Soon." The fog clung to St. Etheldra's convent like a jealous lover, its tendrils seeping through cracked windows and under doors. Sister Agnes sat alone in her cell, the hour past midnight, her rosary abandoned on the narrow bed. The whispers from the garden meeting with Benedict and Clara still echoed in her mind, "The pure shall bleed," and the image of the red-habited nun burned behind her eyes. Sleep was impossible, every creak of the convent's ancient bones felt like a summons, every shadow a threat. She lit a single candle, its flame trembling as if afraid, and pulled a small, battered journal from her suitcase, her only keepsake from a life before the veil. The journal was her mother's, its pages filled with frantic scrawls and prayers, a record of a woman unraveling. Agnes hadn't opened it in years, but tonight, with death stalking the convent, she needed answers. Her mother, Eliza, had died by her own hand when Agnes was 10, her wrist slashed in a locked room. The church called it sin, Agnes called it mystery. She flipped to a page dated 15 years ago, the ink smudged as if written in haste. They came at night, the ones in red. They spoke of a serpent, of a power beneath the earth. I refused them, but they know about Agnes. They say she's marked. God help us. Agnes's breath caught. Her mother had known something tied to the Order of the Serpent, to the Liber Asmodeus. The words, "she's marked," sent a chill through her, as if the convent shadows had reached into her past. She slammed the journal shut, her hands shaking, and that's when she heard it, a soft tap at her door, like a fingertip testing the wood. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely a whisper. No answer came, only another tap, then a scrape, slow and deliberate. She grabbed the candle and approached the door, her pulse hammering. The handle rattled, and she yanked it open, revealing an empty corridor. But on the floor lay a single red petal, its edges curling like a dying flame. Agnes's knees buckled. She shut the door, barring it with a chair, and sank to the floor, the petal clutched in her hand. Her mother's words looped in her mind, "They know about Agnes." Was she the pure soul the parchments warned of? And if so, what did the Order want with her? The candle flickered out, plunging the cell into darkness. A voice, soft, feminine, dripping with malice, whispered from the corner, "You cannot hide what you are." Agnes scrambled for her rosary, chanting prayers, but the voice laughed, curling around her like smoke. The air grew heavy, pressing against her chest, and for a moment, she saw her, a nun in a red habit, standing by the bed, her face a void, her hands dripping black ichor. Then she was gone, leaving only silence and the faint scent of decay. Agnes didn't sleep. At dawn, she tucked the journal and petal into her habit, resolved to share them with Benedict and Clara. Whatever was hunting her, it wasn't just in the convent, it was in her blood. The convent's library was a tomb of secrets, its shelves a labyrinth where truth hid in shadows. Agnes met Benedict there at noon, the hour when most sisters were at their chores, leaving the vast room empty. He stood by a stained glass window, the light painting his face in hues of blood and gold, his leather jacket a stark contrast to the convent's austerity. The Liber Asmodeus lay open on a table, its pages a silent accusation. "You look like you'd seen a ghost," Benedict said, his voice light but his eyes sharp, reading her exhaustion. "Worse," Agnes said, pulling the journal and petal from her habit. She recounted the night's events, her mother's words, the red petal, the voice. Benedict listened, his jaw tightening, and when she showed him the petal, he cursed under his breath. "This is belladonna," he said, holding it to the light. "Poisonous. Grows in the forest, but it shouldn't be here. Someone left it for you." Agnes's stomach twisted. "My mother wrote about ones in red. She knew about the Order." "Benedict, what if I'm part of this?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, touch that lingered too long. "You're not a pawn in their game, Agnes. You're a threat. That's why they're scared of you." Her breath hitched. His nearness was a danger she couldn't ignore, pulled upward with her vows. "I'm scared too," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Benedict's eyes softened, and before she could think, he cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, and then he kissed her, a fierce, desperate kiss that tasted of rebellion and guilt. Agnes froze, then melted into it, her hands gripping his jacket, the world dissolving into heat and want. The kiss broke as footsteps echoed in the corridor. They sprang apart, Agnes's face burning, her heart a traitor. Clara burst in, her eyes wide, taking in their flushed faces but saying nothing about it. "We've got a problem," she said, her voice urgent. "I followed Sister Ruth last night. She went to the old wing, carrying something, looked like a knife." Benedict frowned. "Ruth? The quiet one?" "She's not quiet," Clara said. "She's loyal. To Mother Superior. To the Order." Agnes's mind raced. Ruth had been there when Mary died, her face unreadable. "We need to know what they are planning," she said. "The Liber Asmodeus mentions a ritual. If they are killing for it, then we stop them," Benedict finished, his voice hard. "But we need more than guesses. Clara, can you get us back to that chamber?" Clara nodded, but her eyes flicked to Agnes, a warning in them. "Just don't let this," she gestured vaguely at them, "cloud your judgment." As Clara left to scout, Benedict turned to Agnes, his expression torn. "I shouldn't have done that," he said. "But I don't regret it." Agnes looked away, her vows a noose around her heart. "We can't," she whispered, but the words felt like a lie. The convent silence was a lie, a thin veil over the chaos brewing beneath. At dusk, Agnes, Benedict, and Clara gathered in the cloister, a courtyard ringed by arches where the fog hung like a shroud. Clara had spent the day watching Ruth, her findings grim. Ruth had been seen whispering with Mother Superior, and a bundle of red fabric had been glimpsed in her cell. The Order of the Serpent was moving, and the convent felt like a trap closing around them. "We go back to the old wing tonight," Clara said, her voice low, her switchblade glinting as she toyed with it. "Ruth's hiding something down there. I saw her sneak out after Vespers." Benedict nodded, his hand brushing Agnes's briefly, a silent apology for their earlier lapse. "We need evidence. Something to prove the Order's active. If we can get to that chamber again, we might find what they are planning." Agnes's stomach knotted. The memory of the red-habited nun in her cell haunted her, but the journal's words, "she's marked," pushed her forward. "I'm in," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. They waited until midnight, slipping through the convent's silent halls. The old wing's door was unlocked, a bad sign, and the staircase descended into a darkness that seemed to breathe. Clara's lantern barely pierced the gloom, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and rot. They reached the ritual chamber, its mosaic floor gleaming faintly, the altar's stains darker than before. Benedict examined the robes on the walls, his fingers tracing their frayed edges. "These are old," he said. "Hundreds of years. But someone's been wearing them." Clara knelt by the altar, her blade scraping at a crack. "There's something here," she said, prying loose a small, iron-bound book. Its cover bore the serpent symbol, and inside were names, dozens of them, some crossed out, others marked with dates. Teresa's and Mary's names were there, scratched in fresh ink. "It's a ledger," Agnes whispered, horror dawning. "They're tracking their victims." Before they could read more, a scream tore through the chamber, followed by a wet, gurgling sound. They spun, Clara raising her lantern, and saw it, blood seeping from the walls, thick and black, forming words in jagged script, "The pure shall bleed." The mosaic pulsed, and the air grew hot, heavy with the stench of sulfur. "Run!" Benedict shouted, grabbing Agnes's hand. They fled, the ledger tucked under Clara's arm, the chamber's hum rising to a deafening wail. As they reached the staircase, Agnes glanced back and saw her, the red-habited nun, standing on the altar, her void face smiling, her hands outstretched as if to embrace her. They burst into the upper halls, gasping, the convent silence a stark contrast to the chaos below. Clara clutched the ledger, her face pale. "This proves it," she said. "The order's killing for the ritual. And they are not done." Agnes's eyes met Benedict's, fear and resolve passing between them. The blood on the wall was a promise, and she knew, with sickening certainty, that her name was next. The convent's cloister was a prison of fog and silence, its arches looming like the ribs of some ancient beast. Sister Agnes stood with Father Benedict and Sister Clara, the iron-bound ledger from the ritual chamber clutched in Clara's hands, its list of names a grim prophecy. The blood-scrawled warning, "The pure shall bleed," burned in Agnes's mind, each letter a pulse of dread. The air was heavy with the scent of wet stone and decay, and every shadow seemed to shift, as if the convent itself were conspiring against them. "We can't stay here," Benedict said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the fog. "If the order knows we have this ledger, they'll come for us." Clara nodded, her switchblade glinting as she tucked the ledger into her habit. "We need to hide it. Somewhere they won't look." Agnes's thoughts raced. The Liber Asmodeus, her mother's journal, the red-habited nun, all pointed to her, as if she were the key to the order's ritual. "My cell," she said. "There's a loose stone under the bed. It's small, but it'll hold the ledger." They moved quickly, slipping through the convent's labyrinthine halls. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant toll of a bell, its mournful clang like a heartbeat. Agnes's cell was a stark refuge, its bare walls and wooden crucifix offering no comfort. She knelt, prying up the stone to reveal a shallow hollow, and Clara slid the ledger inside, covering it with dirt. As Agnes stood, a sharp pain lanced through her wrist. She gasped, pulling back her sleeve to reveal a mark, red, raw, shaped like a serpent devouring its tail, etched into her skin as if burned. What is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. Benedict grabbed her wrist, his touch gentle but urgent. "It's a sigil," he said, his face pale. "I've seen it in possession cases. It means something's claimed you." Clara's eyes widened. "The Liber Asmodeus said the ritual needs a pure soul. Agnes, they've marked you for it." Panic clawed at Agnes's chest. Her mother's words, "They say she's marked," echoed, no longer a memory but a sentence. Before she could speak, a low hum rose from the walls, the same dissonant chant they'd heard in the old wing. The crucifix rattled, then fell, splintering on the floor. A voice, cold, feminine, dripping with venom, whispered from the air, "You belong to us." Benedict pulled Agnes behind him, his hand on the silver cross at his neck. "Stay back," he snapped, though his voice wavered. Clara brandished her blade, her stance defiant, but the hum grew louder, the air thickening until it felt like breathing tar. The door burst open, revealing Sister Ruth, her gaunt face twisted with fervor, her eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "You cannot stop what is written," she hissed, her voice layered, as if another spoke through her. In her hand was a curved dagger, its blade etched with the serpent sigil. Benedict lunged, tackling Ruth to the ground, the dagger skittering across the floor. Agnes grabbed it, her hand shaking, as Clara pinned Ruth's arms. "Who's doing this?" Clara demanded. "What does the order want?" Ruth laughed, a guttural sound that wasn't human. The chain breaks. The pure soul opens the way. Asmodeus rises. Her body convulsed, blood trickling from her eyes, and she went limp, her breath stopping. Agnes dropped the dagger, horror choking her. "She's dead," she whispered, backing away. The mark on her wrist burned, a reminder of her fate. "We need to move," Benedict said, his voice tight. "They know we're here." As they fled the cell, the hum faded, but the convent felt alive, its walls watching, waiting. Agnes knew one thing: the order wasn't just a threat, it was a machine, and she was its fuel. The convent's chapel was a hollow sanctuary, its stained glass windows casting fractured light across the pews. Agnes, Benedict, and Clara sought refuge there after Ruth's death, the weight of her words, Asmodeus rises, pressing against them like a storm. The air was thick with incense, but it couldn't mask the faint, sour tang of blood that seemed to follow them. Agnes's wrist throbbed, the serpent sigil pulsing in time with her heartbeat, a constant reminder of the order's claim. "We can't trust anyone," Benedict said, pacing the aisle, his leather jacket creaking. Ruth wasn't acting alone. The order's bigger than we thought, and Mother Superior's at the heart of it. Clara leaned against a pew, her face drawn. "I've seen her with Ruth," whispering in the cloister. "And there's a locked room in her office, always guarded. If we're going to find answers, that's where we start." Agnes nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Clara's knowledge of the order was too precise, her movements too calculated. She'd been part of something before, she'd admitted as much, but how deep did her ties run? Agnes pushed the thought away, focusing on the ledger's list of names, the deaths of Teresa and Mary, the mark on her skin. She had to trust Clara, for now. "We need a plan," Agnes said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Mother Superior's watching me. She knows I've been with you both." Benedict stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers, a flicker of guilt in them. "That's my fault," he said softly. "I've put you in their sights." Agnes's cheeks warmed, the memory of their kiss a forbidden spark. "We're all in this," she said, avoiding his gaze. "But we need to be careful. If they're planning a ritual, we're running out of time." Clara smirked, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Careful's not my style, but I'll play along. Tonight, after Compline, I'll distract the sisters. You two get into that office." The plan was set, but as they left the chapel, Agnes caught Clara slipping a small, folded paper into her sleeve. It was quick, almost invisible, but it planted a seed of suspicion. Was Clara helping them, or leading them into a trap? That night, Compline was a tense affair, the sisters' chants heavy with an unspoken fear. Mother Superior's gaze lingered on Agnes, her eyes like knives, and Agnes felt the sigil on her wrist flare, as if responding to the older woman's presence. After the service, Clara slipped away, her absence unnoticed by the others, and Agnes and Benedict hurried to Mother Superior's office. The door was locked, but Benedict picked it with a skill that spoke of a less holy past. Inside, the office was stark, its walls lined with books and a single, massive crucifix. A hidden panel behind the desk revealed a narrow door, its frame etched with serpent symbols. Benedict pushed it open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Before they could enter, a scream shattered the silence, not Clara's, but another sister's, from the cloister. Agnes's heart lurched. "Clara," she whispered, torn between the staircase and the scream. Benedict grabbed her arm. "We can't help her if we're caught. We go down." They descended, the air growing colder, the scent of blood and sulfur thickening. At the bottom was a small chamber, its walls painted with scenes of a horned figure and robed women, their faces blank. A table held a single object, a silver chalice, its rim crusted with dried blood, and beside it, a list of names, matching the ledgers, but with one addition: Agnes. "They are ready for me," she whispered, horror choking her. Benedict's face hardened. "Not if we stop them first." But as they turned to leave, the door above slammed shut, trapping them in the chamber. A laugh, low, feminine, and cruel, echoed from the walls, and the chalice began to bleed, its crimson stream pooling on the floor. The chamber beneath Mother Superior's office was a cage of stone and shadow, the bleeding chalice casting a red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Sister Agnes stood frozen, the list with her name burning in her hand, the laugh of the red-habited nun ringing in her ears. Father Benedict pounded on the locked door above, his fists bruising against the wood, but it held fast, as if sealed by something beyond iron. The air was thick with sulfur, and the sigil on Agnes's wrist burned, each throb a reminder of her role in the Order's ritual. "We're trapped," Agnes said, her voice shaking. "They wanted us to find this." Benedict turned, his face grim but resolute. "Then we use it. Whatever's down here, it's their weakness. They wouldn't hide it otherwise." He searched the chamber, his hands tracing the painted walls, while Agnes examined the chalice. Its blood was warm, impossibly fresh, and as she touched it, a vision flashed through her mind, a circle of red-robed figures, chanting in a language older than Latin, a girl, young, pale, her wrists marked like Agnes's, screaming as a horned shadow loomed. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, her hands slick with blood that wasn't there. "Benedict," she whispered, "this chalice, it's part of the ritual. I saw something, a sacrifice." He joined her, his eyes narrowing at the chalice. "It's a vessel," he said. "For blood, for power. The Order's been feeding it for centuries." Before they could search further, the walls shuddered, dust raining from the ceiling. A low growl filled the chamber, not human but alive, and the paintings seemed to move, their blank-faced women turning to stare. Agnes clutched her rosary, its beads digging into her palm, and began to pray, but the words faltered as the growl became words, "You are mine." Benedict pulled her back, his cross raised like a weapon. "Stay behind me," he said, but his voice betrayed his fear. The chalice's blood began to rise, defying gravity, forming a shape, a serpent, its eyes glowing red, its hiss deafening. Agnes screamed, and Benedict swung his cross, the serpent dissolving into mist, but the chamber shook harder, cracks splitting the walls. "We need to get out!" Agnes shouted, her voice raw. Benedict found a loose stone in the wall, prying it free to reveal a tunnel, narrow and reeking of earth. They crawled through, the chamber collapsing behind them, the growl fading but never gone. The tunnel led to the convent's crypt, a maze of tombs and cobwebs, where Clara waited, her face blooded, her habit torn. "You're alive," Agnes said, relief flooding her. but Clara's expression was cold. "Barely," Clara said, her voice sharp. "I distracted Ruth, but she wasn't alone. The order's moving tonight. They know you're marked, Agnes." Benedict frowned. "How do you know so much, Clara? You've been one step ahead this whole time." Clara's eyes flickered, a shadow of guilt crossing her face. "I told you, I ran from something." "I didn't say what." "I was part of the order, years ago. I left, but they never let you go." Agnes stepped back, betrayal cutting deep. "You lied to us." "I'm trying to fix it," Clara snapped, her voice breaking. "I led you to the ledger, to the chamber. I'm risking everything." The crypt's silence was shattered by footsteps, heavy, deliberate, approaching fast. Shadows moved at the edges, red-robed figures emerging, their faces hidden. Mother Superior stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "You've played your parts well," she said. "The pure soul is ready." Benedict pushed Agnes behind him, his cross raised, but the figures closed in, their daggers glinting. Clara lunged, her blade slashing one's arm, but a blow knocked her down, blood pooling beneath her. Agnes screamed, her wrist burning as the sigil glowed, and the last thing she saw was Benedict fighting, his cross swinging, before a cloth pressed to her face, chloroform stinging her lungs, and darkness claimed her. Sister Agnes woke to the taste of iron and the sting of cold stone against her cheek. Her head throbbed, the chloroform's bitter residue clinging to her throat, and her wrists burned where coarse ropes bound them behind her back. Darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. She lay on the floor of a chamber deep within St. Etheldra's convent, its air heavy with the stench of damp earth and something fouler, rot, or blood. The serpent sigil on her wrist pulsed, a living brand that seemed to whisper her fate, the pure soul, marked for sacrifice. She struggled to sit, her habit torn and damp, her rosary gone. The memory of the crypt flooded back, Benedict fighting red-robed figures, Clara's blood pooling, Mother Superior's triumphant sneer. Agnes's heart clenched. Were they alive? Or had the Order of the Serpent claimed them too? She tested her bonds, the ropes cutting into her skin, but they held fast. Panic clawed at her, but she forced it down, whispering a prayer, "Lord, give me strength." The words felt fragile, like glass in a storm. A faint glow appeared, torch flickering to life on the wall, casting jagged shadows across the chamber. The walls were carved with serpentine runes, their curves glinting as if wet, and at the center stood a stone slab, its surface stained black, etched with the same horned figure from the Liber Asmodeus. Agnes's breath hitched. This was no cell, it was an altar, built for her. Footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. Mother Superior emerged from the shadows, her black habit blending with the dark, her face a mask of cold serenity. Behind her stood two red-robed figures, their faces veiled, each holding a dagger that gleamed like polished bone. "You're awake," Mother Superior said, her voice smooth as venom. "Good. The ritual requires your awareness." Agnes's mouth went dry. "What do you want with me?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Mother Superior knelt, her eyes locking onto Agnes's. "You are the key, child. The pure soul to unbind Asmodeus. Your blood will break the chain that holds him, and he will reward us with power beyond mortal ken." "You're insane," Agnes spat, her fear giving way to defiance. God will judge you for this." Mother Superior laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "God abandoned this place long ago. Asmodeus is our truth now." She rose, nodding to the figures. "Prepare her." The robed women advanced, their daggers flashing. Agnes thrashed, kicking at the stone, but they seized her, their grip iron. One pressed a blade to her throat, its edge grazing her skin, while the other began to chant, a low, guttural cadence that made the wounds on the walls pulse red. Agnes's sigil burned hotter, and a vision flashed, her mother, Eliza, bound on this same slab, screaming as red-robed figures carved her wrists. The vision shattered, leaving Agnes gasping, her mother's fate now her own. A distant crash broke the chant, stone crumbling, voices shouting. The robed figures froze, and Mother Superior's face twisted with rage. "Find them," she snarled. The women vanished into the dark, leaving Agnes alone with her captor. Agnes's heart leapt. Benedict? Clara? Someone was coming. She strained against the ropes, her wrists raw, and whispered another prayer, not for strength but for time. The chamber's shadows seemed to writhe, and a voice, soft, feminine, dripping with malice, whispered from the altar, "Your blood is mine." The red-habited nun flickered into view, her void face smiling, then vanished as footsteps thundered closer. Sister Clara crouched in the crypt's shadows, her breath ragged, her switchblade slick with blood. The gash on her temple throbbed where a red-robed figure had struck her, but she was alive, barely. The crypt's tombs loomed around her, their stone faces carved with weeping angels, and the air was thick with dust and the echo of her own failure. She'd betrayed Agnes and Benedict, hiding her past with the Order of the Serpent, and now Agnes was gone, taken by Mother Superior's fanatics. Clara's guilt was a blade in her gut, sharper than any dagger. She'd woken minutes ago, sprawled among the crypt's bones, Benedict's voice pulling her from the dark. He knelt nearby now, his leather jacket torn, his silver cross dangling as he bandaged a cut on his arm. His face was hard, but his eyes burned with a fire Clara hadn't seen before. "We're not done," he said, his voice low. "They took Agnes. We get her back." Clara wiped blood from her cheek, her smirk long gone. "You don't get it, do you? The Order's been planning this for years. Agnes is their endgame. And she faltered, shame choking her. "I was one of them, Benedict. I helped them, before I ran." Benedict's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "I don't care what you were. You're here now. Help me save her, and we're square." Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. She'd joined the Order as a desperate girl, lured by promises of power, only to flee when she saw their true cost: blood, souls, madness. Now, she'd make it right. "There's a hidden passage," she said, pointing to a tomb with a cracked lid. "Leads to the lower chambers. That's where they'll take her." They pried open the tomb, revealing a tunnel that reeked of sulfur and decay. Clara led the way, her lantern casting a feeble glow, her blade ready. The tunnel twisted, its walls etched with scenes of sacrifice, nuns kneeling before a horned shadow, their wrists bleeding into chalices. Benedict's cross gleamed as he muttered a prayer, but Clara felt no comfort. The Order's god was older, hungrier. The tunnel opened into a corridor lined with iron grates, their bars sticky with black ichor. A scream, Agnes's, cut through the dark, sharp and desperate. Clara's heart lurched, and she broke into a run, Benedict at her heels. They reached a massive door, its wood carved with the serpent sigil, and Benedict threw his weight against it, the hinges groaning but holding. "Stand back," Clara said, pulling a hairpin from her habit. She worked the lock, her fingers steady despite the blood dripping from her temple, and the door swung open, revealing chaos, two red-robed figures dragging Agnes toward a stone slab, Mother Superior chanting over a bleeding chalice, runes glowing red on the walls. Clara didn't hesitate. She lunged, her blade slashing one figure's arm, blood spraying. Benedict tackled the other, his cross swinging like a cudgel. Agnes thrashed against her ropes, her eyes wide with fear and hope. Mother Superior spun, her chant faltering, and raised a dagger, its blade glinting with unnatural light. "You cannot stop the inevitable," she hissed, lunging at Clara. Clara dodged, her blade meeting the dagger in a shower of sparks, and the chamber shook, the runes flaring brighter. Agnes's sigil glowed through her sleeve, and the red-habited nun appeared behind the slab, her void face laughing, her presence a weight that crushed the air. Clara fought, her guilt fueling her, but Mother Superior was relentless, her dagger nicking Clara's shoulder. As blood seeped through her habit, Clara knew this was her redemption, or her end. The ritual chamber was a crucible of blood and fire, its runes pulsing like a heartbeat, the air thick with the stench of sulfur and despair. Sister Agnes strained against her ropes, her wrists raw, her sigil burning as if it would sear through her flesh. Clara and Benedict fought Mother Superior and her red-robed acolytes, steel clashing, blood spilling, but the red-habited nun's laughter echoed, a sound that twisted Agnes's soul. The chalice on the slab bled faster, its crimson pool spreading, and Agnes felt it, a pull, deep and primal, as if her blood were answering a call. "Stop her!" Agnes shouted, her voice hoarse, as Mother Superior drove Clara back, her dagger flashing. Benedict grappled with an acolyte, his cross leaving a burn on her skin, but the second acolyte lunged at Agnes, her dagger aimed for her heart. Agnes kicked out, her foot connecting with the woman's knee, sending her sprawling. The ropes loosened slightly, and she twisted, desperation giving her strength. Clara parried Mother Superior's strike, her blade nicking the older woman's arm, but Mother Superior didn't flinch. "You betrayed us, Clara," she snarled. "Your soul is forfeit." "Then take it," Clara spat, lunging. Their blades locked, and Clara shoved, sending Mother Superior staggering into the slab. The chalice tipped, its blood splashing across the runes, and the chamber roared, the floor cracking, a hot wind howling from nowhere. The red-habited nun flickered, her form solidifying, her void face now a smile of sharp teeth. Benedict dispatched the second acolyte, her body crumpling, and rushed to Agnes, cutting her ropes with a stolen dagger. "You're okay," he said, his voice raw, his hand steadying her as she stood. Their eyes met, the memory of their kiss a fleeting spark, but there was no time for guilt or longing. "We need to stop this," Agnes said, her gaze on the chalice. The blood was moving, forming a circle around the slab, and the Liber Asmodeus words echoed in her mind, "The pure soul shall unbind the chain." She was the key, but she wouldn't be their pawn. Clara screamed, Mother Superior's dagger slicing her thigh. She fell, blood pooling, but slashed upward, catching Mother Superior's wrist. The older woman howled, dropping her dagger, and Clara kicked it away, crawling to her feet. "Get the chalice," she yelled to Agnes. Agnes lunged for it, but the red-habited nun appeared, her hand closing around Agnes's throat, cold as death. "You are mine," she hissed, her voice a chorus of torment. Agnes choked, her vision darkening, but Benedict swung his cross, its silver glowing, and the nun recoiled, her form flickering. Agnes grabbed the chalice, its blood scalding her hands, and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, the wounds dimming, the chamber's roar fading to a whine. Mother Superior screamed, clutching her head as if in pain, and the red-habited nun vanished, her laughter replaced by silence. But the victory was fleeting. Mother Superior staggered to her feet, her eyes wild. "You've delayed us, nothing more," she spat, and fled into a side tunnel, her robes trailing blood. The acolytes were gone, their bodies still, and Clara collapsed, her wounds too deep. "Clara!" Agnes knelt beside her, tearing her habit to bind the wounds. Clara's face was pale, her breath shallow, but she managed a weak smile. "Told you I'd fix it," she whispered. Benedict checked the tunnel, his face grim. "She's gone, but this isn't over." The rituals paused, not stopped. Agnes looked at the shattered chalice, its blood seeping into the stone, and felt the sigil on her wrist pulse. The order was wounded, but not broken, and her role in their plan was far from over. As they carried Clara from the chamber, the convent's shadows seemed to watch, waiting for their next move. The crypt of St. Etheldra's convent was a maze of dust and decay, its stone tombs etched with names long forgotten. Sister Agnes and Father Benedict half-carried, half-dragged Sister Clara through its shadowed aisles, her blood leaving a dark trail on the floor. Clara's face was pale, her breath shallow, the wounds on her thigh and shoulder seeping despite Agnes's makeshift bandages. The air was thick with the scent of mold and iron, and the distant hum of the ritual chamber lingered in Agnes's ears, a reminder that the Order of the Serpent was far from defeated. The serpent sigil on her wrist dropped, its heat a constant whisper of her role in their unholy plan. "We need to get her to the infirmary," Agnes said, her voice tight, her habit stained with Clara's blood. "She's losing too much." Benedict nodded, his jaw set, his leather jacket torn from the fight. "The sisters will ask questions. We can't trust anyone, not after Ruth." Clara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "No, infirmary," she rasped, her voice weak but fierce. "They'll find me. Take me to the garden shed. Hidden, supplies there." Agnes exchanged a glance with Benedict. The garden shed was a crumbling outbuilding, rarely used, but Clara's insistence carried weight. They changed course, slipping through a side passage that led to the convent's overgrown garden. The fog was thicker now, a grey shroud that muffled their footsteps and hid them from prying eyes. The shed loomed ahead, its wood warped and splintered, its door hanging ajar like a broken jaw. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of rust and earth. Clara pointed to a crate in the corner, her hand trembling. "Under there," she whispered. Benedict pried it open, revealing a cache of bandages, antiseptic, and a small vial of morphine, supplies no nun should have. Agnes's suspicion fled, but she pushed it aside, focusing on Clara's wounds. As Benedict cleaned and bandaged Clara's injuries, Agnes knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from her face. "Why do you have this?" she asked, her voice soft but probing. "What else haven't you told us?" Clara's lips twitched, a ghost of her usual smirk. "Old habits," she murmured. "When I left the order, I kept things in case they came for me." Her eyes met Agnes's, raw with guilt. I'm sorry for lying. But I'm with you now." Agnes wanted to believe her, but the seed of doubt remained. She nodded, squeezing Clara's hand, and turned to Benedict, who was watching them with a mix of concern and resolve. "We need to find Mother Superior," she said. "She's planning something bigger." The chalice was just the start. Benedict's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent a spark through her, reigniting the guilt of their kiss. "We will," he said. "But first, we need to know what we're up against. The Liber Asmodeus, we have to go back to it." The shed's door creaked, and Agnes spun, her heart leaping. A shadow moved outside, too tall to be a sister, its outline distorted by the fog. Benedict drew a dagger from his belt, stolen from an acolyte, and stepped forward, but the shadow vanished, leaving only the rustle of leaves. The air grew colder, and a whisper curled through the fog, soft and venomous, "You cannot escape." Agnes's sigil flared, and she clutched her wrist, fear choking her. The red-habited nun was still here, watching, waiting. Clara's eyes widened, her breath hitching. "She's close," she whispered. "Asmodeus, he's waking." They barricaded the shed, but Agnes knew it was only a temporary sanctuary. The Order was hunting, and the convent was no longer a house of God, it was a battlefield. The library of St. Etheldra was a fortress of shadows, its shelves towering like sentinels over a kingdom of secrets. Sister Agnes and Father Benedict slipped inside at dawn, the convent still asleep, its silence a fragile lie. Clara remained in the shed, stable but weak, a warning about Asmodeus echoing in Agnes's mind. The Liber Asmodeus was their only hope of understanding the Order's ritual, but returning to it felt like stepping into a lion's den. The sigil on Agnes's wrist burned, a constant reminder of her connection to the demon's plan. Benedict lit a single candle, its flame casting flickering light across the dusty tomes. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the stacks. "If Mother Superior's still here, she'll have eyes everywhere." Agnes nodded, her heart pounding as she led him to the shelf where the Liber Asmodeus hid. The book was still there, its leather cover embossed with the Serpent sigil, its presence heavy, as if it knew they'd come. She pulled it down, dust clouding the air, and opened it on a table, its pages brittle and stained with age. The Latin text was dense, interwoven with symbols that seemed to shift under her gaze, and the illustrations, horned figures, bleeding nuns, circles of flame, made her stomach twist. Benedict leaned over her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck, a distraction she couldn't afford. "Look for anything about the pure soul," he said, his finger tracing a line of text. "Or how to break the ritual." Agnes scanned the pages, her Latin rusty but sufficient. A passage caught her eye, written in a different hand, as if added later, "The pure soul's blood is the key, but the chain binds both ways. To break Asmodeus, the vessel must choose, life for life, or all shall burn." Her breath caught. Did it mean her death could stop the demon, or something else? Before she could read more, the candle snuffed out, plunging the library into darkness. A low laugh echoed from the stacks, feminine and cruel, the red-habited nun. Agnes grabbed Benedict's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "She's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Benedict relit the candle, but the light revealed something worse. The book's pages were bleeding, crimson seeping from the text, pooling on the table. The sigil on Agnes's wrist flared, and a vision gripped her, a girl, her wrists marked, standing in a circle of red-robed figures, her blood draining into a chalice as a horned shadow rose. The girl's face was her mother's, then her own, blurring into one. Agnes staggered, Benedict catching her before she fell. "What did you see?" he demanded, his voice urgent. "My mother," she gasped. "She was part of this. They used her, and now me." The laugh grew louder, and the shelves shook, books tumbling to the floor. A shadow moved at the edge of the light, a figure in a red habit, her void face smiling, her hands dripping black ichor. Benedict raised his cross, chanting in Latin, but the figure only tilted her head, amused. The candle flared, and she was gone, but the book's blood had formed words on the table: choose. Agnes's heart raced. The manuscript wasn't just a record, it was alive, tied to Asmodeus, and it wanted her to decide her fate. Benedict pulled her toward the door, the book under his arm. "We're not safe here," he said. "We need to regroup." As they fled, Agnes felt the convent walls watching, the shadows whispering her name. The choice was coming, and she wasn't ready. The garden shed was a fragile haven, its walls creaking under the weight of the fog that pressed against St. Etheldra's. Sister Clara lay on a makeshift bed of crates, her wounds bandaged but her face pale, her breath steady but weak. Sister Agnes and Father Benedict returned at midday, the Liber Asmodeus hidden under Benedict's jacket, its cursed pages a heavy burden. The air was thick with tension, the convent silence a predator waiting to strike. Clara stirred as they entered, her eyes sharp despite her pain. "You got it?" she asked, nodding at the bulge in Benedict's jacket. Agnes nodded, her wrists still burning from the sigil's flare in the library. "It's worse than we thought," she said, recounting the bleeding pages, the vision of her mother, the word, choose. "The ritual needs my blood, but there's a way to stop it. I just don't know what it costs." Clara's face darkened. "The Order's been doing this for centuries. They don't just want power, they want to free Asmodeus completely. And you're the last piece." Benedict set the book down, his hands steady but his eyes troubled. "We need to find Mother Superior," he said. "She's the head of this. If we can stop her, we can break the Order." Clara snorted, wincing as she shifted. "Good luck. She's a ghost when she wants to be. But I know where she might be, the old bell tower. It's where they meet when things go wrong." Agnes frowned. "How do you know that?" Clara's gaze dropped, guilt flickering. "I told you, I was one of them. I've been to their meetings. The tower's got a hidden room, sealed with a sigil like yours." Benedict's eyes narrowed, but he didn't press her. "Then that's our next move. We go tonight." The day passed in uneasy quiet, the trio preparing as best they could. Agnes cleaned Clara's wounds, her hands gentle, her mind racing. Benedict sharpened a stolen dagger, his prayers a low murmur, while Clara sketched a map of the tower's secret entrance. But the convent was no longer still, footsteps echoed in the halls, too heavy for nuns, and the fog carried whispers that weren't human. At dusk, they set out, leaving Clara hidden in the shed. The bell tower loomed at the convent's edge, its spire piercing the fog like a blade. The entrance was a rusted grate, hidden behind ivy, and Benedict pried it open, revealing a spiral staircase that reeked of damp stone and blood. Agnes's sigil burned as they climbed, the air growing hotter, the whispers louder, chanting her name. They reached a sealed door, its wood carved with the serpent sigil. Benedict traced it with his cross, and it opened, revealing a circular room lit by torches. Red-robed figures stood in a circle, Mother Superior at the center, a new chalice in her hands, its blood glowing. But it was a trap. The figures turned, their daggers raised, and Mother Superior smiled, her voice cold. "Welcome, Sister Agnes. The ritual begins now." Before Agnes could react, the floor shook, and a roar filled the room, not from the figures but from the chalice itself. The red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her teeth glinting, and the sigil on Agnes's wrist flared white-hot, pulling her toward the chalice like a moth to flame. The hidden room in St. Etheldra's bell tower was a crucible of fire and shadow, its air thick with the stench of blood and sulfur. Sister Agnes staggered, the serpent sigil on her wrist blazing white-hot, pulling her toward the glowing chalice in Mother Superior's hands like a chain. The red-robed figures of the Order of the Serpent closed in, their daggers glinting, their veiled faces blank as death. Father Benedict fought at the room's edge, his silver cross swinging, each strike leaving burns on the acolyte's skin. The red-habited nun loomed behind the chalice, her toothy smile a slash of malice, her presence a weight that crushed Agnes's soul. The floor trembled, the torches flaring, and the chalice's blood pulsed, its rhythm matching her heartbeat. "You cannot fight fate," Mother Superior intoned, her voice a venomous hymn, her eyes locked on Agnes. "Your blood will free Asmodeus. Embrace it, child." Agnes's knees buckled, the sigil's heat searing her flesh, but she clung to defiance. "I'll die before I help you," she spat, her voice raw, her hands clawing at the air as if to break the invisible tether. Benedict roared, dispatching an acolyte with a brutal swing, blood spraying across the stone. He lunged toward Agnes, but two more figures blocked him, their daggers slashing. "Agnes, hold on," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation, his cross glowing faintly as he chanted in Latin. The red-habited nun laughed, her form flickering, and the chalice's blood began to rise, forming a serpentine shape that coiled toward Agnes. Her vision blurred, and a memory, not her own, flooded her mind, a girl, centuries ago, marked like her, standing in this same room, her blood draining into a chalice as a haunted shadow roared. The girl's eyes were Agnes's, her scream her own. The vision shattered, and Agnes gasped, realizing the truth. She wasn't just marked, she was bound to Asmodeus across time, a vessel chosen through generations. The chalice's pull tightened, and Agnes stumbled forward, her hand brushing its rim. The blood burned, and a voice, deep, ancient, seductive, spoke in her mind. "Join me, and live forever," she recoiled, her rosary beads, tapped in her sleeve, pressing against her skin, grounding her. She whispered a prayer, her voice trembling, "Deliver me from evil." A crash broke the spell. Clara, blooded but alive, burst through the door, her switchblade flashing. She dragged herself from the garden shed, her wounds reopened, her face a mask of fury. "Get away from her," she screamed, hurling her blade at Mother Superior. The dagger grazed the older woman's shoulder, and the chalice wobbled, its blood splashing across the floor. The red-habited nun hissed, her form destabilizing, and the room shook, cracks splitting the walls. Benedict seized the moment, tackling the remaining acolytes, his cross burning their flesh. Agnes lunged for the chalice, knocking it from Mother Superior's hands. It hit the floor but didn't break, its blood pooling, the serpent shape reforming, larger, its eyes glowing red. Mother Superior screamed, clutching her bleeding shoulder, and fled through a side door, the acolytes following. Clara collapsed, her strength spent, and Benedict rushed to Agnes, pulling her away from the chalice. "We need to go," he said, his voice urgent, his hand warm on her arm. They dragged Clara from the room, the chalice's blood hissing behind them, the red-habited nun's laughter fading but not gone. The tower's stairs were a blur of pain and fear, and as they reached the cloister, Agnes's sigil cooled, but the voice in her mind lingered. "You cannot run." The order had failed again, but the ritual was closer than ever, and Agnes was its heart. The convent's garden was a graveyard of fog and thorns, its roses wilted under the weight of an unnatural chill. Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara took refuge in the shed, its walls a flimsy shield against the order's wrath. Clara lay on the crates, her wounds freshly bandaged, her face pale but her eyes defiant. The Liber Asmodeus, retrieved from the library, sat on a crate, its presence a silent threat, its pages still stained with blood from their last encounter. Agnes's wrist dropped, the serpent sigil a constant reminder of the chalice's call, the vision of her ancestral connection to Asmodeus haunting her. "We're running out of time," Benedict said, pacing, his leather jacket stained with blood and ash. "The order's not stopping. That chalice, they'll find another way to use it." Clara coughed, wincing as she sat up. "They don't need another way," she said, her voice hoarse. "Agnes is the key. Her blood, her soul, it's what they've been chasing for centuries. I saw it when I was with them. They believe she's the last of a bloodline tied to the original binding." Agnes's stomach twisted, her mother's journal flashing in her mind. "They say she's marked." "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why my family?" Clara's gaze dropped, guilt shadowing her face. "I don't know everything. But the order tracks bloodlines. Your mother, she was supposed to be the vessel, but she fought them. Died for it. They've been waiting for you ever since." Benedict stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. "You knew this and didn't tell us." His voice was low, dangerous, the trust between them fraying. "What else are you hiding, Clara?" Clara's jaw tightened. "I told you what I could. I left the order, Benedict. I'm bleeding for you both. Isn't that enough?" "Not if you're still playing both sides," he shot back, his hand on his cross, as if it could shield him from betrayal. Agnes stepped between them, her heart torn. "Stop it," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "Clara saved me back there. She's with us." But doubt lingered, a poison in her thoughts. Clara's past was a maze of secrets, and every step with her felt like walking on glass. Benedict exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "Fine. But we need answers, not half-truths. The Liber Asmodeus, we have to decode it fully. If there's a way to break the ritual without Agnes dying, it's in there." They opened the book, its pages heavy with menace. Agnes traced a passage, her Latin halting but clear. "The chain is forged by sacrifice, but broken by will. The vessel's choice defies the blood." Her breath caught. A choice, her choice, could stop Asmodeus, but the cost was unclear, shrouded in cryptic warnings. As they read, a shadow moved outside the shed, silent but deliberate. Agnes froze, her sigil flaring, and whispered, "Someone's here." Benedict grabbed his dagger, Clara her blade, but the door burst open, revealing Sister Ruth, alive, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light, her habit stained with blood. "You cannot hide," she hissed, her voice layered, as if Asmodeus spoke through her. Benedict lunged, but Ruth was fast, her dagger slashing his arm. Clara threw her blade, catching Ruth's shoulder, but Ruth didn't flinch, her laughter echoing the red-habited nuns. Agnes grabbed the Liber Asmodeus, clutching it as a shield, and shouted a prayer, her voice trembling but fierce. Ruth staggered, her eyes dimming, and fled into the fog, her laughter trailing like a curse. The shed was silent, but the fracture in their trust had deepened. Agnes looked at Clara, then Benedict, and knew the order was closing in, and their unity was their only hope, or their greatest weakness. The fog around St. Etheldra's convent was a living thing, curling through the blackwood forest like a serpent, its whispers blending with the rustle of leaves. Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara fled the shed after Ruth's attack, the Liber Asmodeus tucked under Agnes's habit, its weight a constant reminder of their mission. Clara limped, her wound slowing her, but her eyes burned with determination. Benedict led the way, his dagger ready, his cross glowing faintly in the gloom. Agnes's sigil pulsed, its heated beacon for the order, and the red-habited nun's laughter echoed in her mind, a taunt that followed them into the trees. "We can't stay in the convent," Benedict said, his voice low, his breath misting in the cold. "Ruth will bring others. The forest, it's our only chance to lose them." Clara nodded, her face pale but resolute. "There's a place," she said. "A ruined chapel, deep in the woods. The order avoids it. They say it's cursed." Agnes frowned, her trust in Clara wavering. "Why haven't you mentioned this before?" Clara's eyes flickered, guilt and defiance warring. "Because I wasn't sure we'd need it. It's not safe, Agnes. But neither is staying here." They pushed deeper into the forest, the trees gnarled and twisted, their branches clawing at the fog. The ground was soft, swallowing their footsteps, and the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of decay and something sweeter, belladonna, Agnes realized, the same poison left in her cell. Her sigil burned, and shadows moved at the forest's edge, too fluid to be human. The chapel appeared like a ghost, its stone walls crumbled, its roof open to the sky. Ivy choked its arches, and a broken altar stood at its center, carved with faded crosses. Clara knelt by the altar, prying loose a stone to reveal a hidden cache, a dagger, a vial of holy water, and a tattered journal, its pages yellowed but intact. "This was mine," Clara said, her voice soft. "From when I was with the order. I hid it here when I ran. It's got names, dates, proof of what they've done." Benedict took the journal, flipping through it, his face grim. "This lists sacrifices," he said. "Dozens, over centuries. And your name's here, Clara. Marked as a traitor." Clara's jaw tightened. "I told you, they don't let you go. But this can help us, show us how they choose their vessels." Agnes's heart sank as she read a name in the journal, Eliza, 1960, failed vessel. Her mother. "She fought them," Agnes whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "And they killed her for it." Before they could read more, the forest stirred, branches snapping, footsteps circling. Red-robed figures emerged, their daggers glinting, Ruth at their lead, her eyes still glowing. "You cannot run from Asmodeus," she hissed, her voice a chorus of the damned. Benedict raised his cross, Clara her dagger, and Agnes clutched the journal, her sigil flaring. The chapel's crosses began to bleed, crimson trickling down the stone, and the red-habited nun appeared on the altar, her smile wide, her hands beckoning. The forest closed in, and Agnes knew this was no sanctuary, it was a trap, and they were the prey. The ruined chapel in the Blackwood Forest was a trap sprung, its crumbling walls closing in like a predator's jaws. Sister Agnes stood at its heart, the tattered journal from Clara's cache clutched to her chest, its pages naming her mother as a failed vessel of the Order of the Serpent. Father Benedict and Sister Clara flanked her, their weapons, his silver cross, a blooded dagger, raised against the red-robed figures encircling them. Sister Ruth led the acolytes, her glowing eyes a beacon of Asmodeus's influence, her voice a guttural chant that shook the air. The red-habited nun perched on the broken altar, her toothy smile glinting, her presence a suffocating weight. Blood dripped from the chapel's crosses, pooling on the floor, and the fog outside howled, as if the forest itself served the demon. "You cannot defy him," Ruth hissed, her dagger gleaming, her acolytes tightening their circle. "The pure soul belongs to Asmodeus." Agnes's wrist burned, the serpent sigil pulsing in rhythm with the blood on the floor. Her mother's fate, death by her own hand to escape the order, flashed in her mind, fueling her resolve. "I'm no one sacrifice," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. Benedict stepped forward, his cross glowing, his Latin prayer a defiant roar, "Exorcismus te, omnis immunda spiritus," the red-habited nun hissed, her form flickering, but Ruth laughed, unaffected, her dagger slashing at Benedict. He dodged, the blade grazing his shoulder, blood seeping through his leather jacket. Clara lunged, her dagger meeting an acolyte's, steel sparking in the dim light. "Get to the altar," she shouted to Agnes, her voice raw, her wounds slowing her but not stopping her. "There's a seal, break it." Agnes ran, dodging an acolyte's grab, her habit tearing as she reached the altar. The journal slipped, its pages fluttering, and she glimpsed a sketch, a stone seal beneath the altar, marked with the serpent sigil, binding Asmodeus's power. She knelt, her hands scraping the blood-slick stone, searching for a crack. The red-habited nun appeared, her icy fingers closing around Agnes's throat, her voice a seductive whisper, "Join me, and be free." Agnes choked, her vision darkening, but she clutched the journal, its pages pressing against her sigil. A memory, not hers, surged, her mother, Eliza, kneeling here, carving a cross into the seal to weaken the order's ritual, her blood sealing the act. Agnes's fingers found the seal, a raised stone etched with the serpent, and she slammed the journal against it, the cross her mother drew glowing faintly. The chapel shook, the blood on the crosses evaporating, the red-habited nun screaming as her form dissolved. Ruth staggered, her eyes dimming, and the acolytes faltered, their daggers dropping. Benedict seized the moment, his cross burning an acolyte's arm, while Clara slashed another's leg, her own blood mixing with theirs. Agnes pried the seal loose, revealing a hollow filled with ash and bone, remnants of past vessels, her mother among them. She recoiled, tears stinging her eyes, but the chapel's tremors stopped, the fog outside stilling. Ruth fled, her acolytes stumbling after her, their chants broken. Benedict helped Clara to her feet, her wounds bleeding anew, and pulled Agnes from the altar, his touch grounding her. "You did it," he said, his voice hoarse, his eyes searching hers for signs of the nun's influence. "It's not over," Agnes whispered, the journal trembling in her hands. The seal was weakened, but Asmodeus's presence lingered, and her sigil still burned. They fled the chapel, the forest's whispers chasing them, the red-habited nun's laughter a faint echo in the trees. The convent's cloister was a ghostly ruin in the dawn's weak light, its arches choked with fog that seemed to pulse with malice. Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara returned from the forest, battered and blooded, the journal from the chapel their only trophy. Clara limped, her wounds bandaged but seeping, her face pale but resolute. Benedict carried the Liber Asmodeus, its weight a constant threat, while Agnes clutched her mother's journal, its pages a map to her cursed bloodline. The serpent sigil on her wrist throbbed, its heat a reminder of the Order's unrelenting hand. They hid in the convent's abandoned kitchen, its hearths cold, its air thick with the scent of ash and grease. Clara collapsed onto a bench, wincing as Agnes rebandaged her thigh. "That seal bought us time," Clara said, her voice strained. "But the Order's not done. They'll find another way to free Asmodeus." Benedict set the Liber Asmodeus on a table, its cover glinting in the dim light. "We need to know why Agnes," he said, his eyes on her, soft but probing. "The journal, your mother's, mentions a bloodline. What does it mean?" Agnes opened the journal, her hands trembling, and read aloud a passage dated months before her mother's death. "They call us the line of the pure, chosen by Asmodeus before the convent was built. Our blood binds him, but also frees him. I try to protect Agnes, but they see her in my place." Her voice broke, tears falling. "She died to keep me from this." Clara's face softened, guilt flickering. "I didn't know about the bloodline when I was with the Order," she said. "But I heard whispers, families marked centuries ago, their daughters sacrificed to keep Asmodeus caged or to set him free. You're the last, Agnes." Benedict's jaw tightened. "Then we break the cycle. The Liber Asmodeus, there's a way to end this without her blood." He opened the book, its pages heavy with blood and ink, and found a passage. "The vessels will can sever the chain, but the price is a soul surrender." His voice faltered. "It's fake, but it's hope." Agnes's heart sank. A soul surrender, hers, or someone else's? The kiss they'd shared flashed in her mind, a sin that bound them, and she wondered if her love for Benedict would be her undoing. She pushed the thought away, focusing on the journal. A sketch caught her eye, a map of the convent's undercroft, marked with a chamber labeled, "The Heart of the Serpent." "That's where they'll go," Agnes said, her voice firm. "Mother Superior, she's rebuilding the ritual. We need to find this chamber." Before they could plan, a scream echoed from the cloister, sharp and human. Benedict grabbed his dagger, Clara her blade, and they rushed out, the fog parting to reveal a horrific sight. Sister Lydia, a young novice, sprawled on the stones, her throat slashed, a serpent-marked parchment clutched in her hand. The words scrawled on it read, "The pure soul's time is near." Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, the red-habited nun, standing over Lydia's body, her hands dripping blood, her smile promising more death. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, Benedict's arm around her, his touch a fragile anchor. "They are taunting us," Clara said, her voice hard. "We need to move, now." But as they turned, a shadow moved in the fog, a figure in a red habit, watching, waiting. The convent was no longer a refuge, it was a slaughterhouse, and Agnes was its prize. The undercroft of St. Etheldra's convent was a labyrinth of stone and shadow, its tunnels winding beneath the earth like the veins of a dying beast. Sister Agnes led Father Benedict and Sister Clara through its damp corridors, the map from her mother's journal their only guide to the heart of the serpent. The Liber Asmodeus was tucked under Benedict's arm, its presence a silent curse, while Clara's dagger gleamed in her hand, her wounds slowing her but not her resolve. Agnes's sigil burned, its heat guiding her like a compass, though each step felt like a descent into hell. The air was thick with the stench of rotten blood, and the walls echoed with a low, rhythmic chant, not human but alive. Lydia's death was a message, Agnes said, her voice echoing in the dark. They're trying to scare me into giving up. Benedict's hand brushed hers, a fleeting comfort. They won't get you, he said, his voice fierce, his eyes haunted by the blood they'd seen. We end this tonight. Clara snorted, her breath labored. Bold words, priest. But the order's been at this for centuries. They don't scare easy. The map led them to a massive door, its iron frame etched with serpentine runes that glowed faintly red. Agnes's sigil flared, and the door groaned open, revealing a vast chamber lit by torches that burned without fuel. At its center was a circular pit, its edges carved with the serpent sigil, and above it hung a new chalice, suspended by chains, its blood dripping into the pit below. Red-robed figures chanted around it, their faces veiled, Mother Superior at their head, her hands raised, her voice a hypnotic drone. The heart of the serpent, Clara whispered, her face pale. This is where they summon him. Before they could retreat, the figures turned, their daggers flashing. Mother Superior's eyes locked onto Agnes, her smile cold. You've come to your destiny, she said. The pure soul will open the way. Agnes's vision blurred, the chalice's blood calling her, the sigil pulling her forward. Benedict grabbed her arm, his cross raised, but the figures surged, their blades a blur. Clara fought, her dagger slashing, but a blow knocked her down, blood pooling beneath her. Agnes screamed, breaking free of the trance, and lunged for the chalice, her hands burning as she gripped its chains. The pit roared, a hot wind rising, and a red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her hands clawing at Agnes's mind. Give in, she hissed, her voice a chorus of torment. Agnes's sigil glowed, and a memory surged, not her mother's, but her own, buried deep, a childhood night, a red-robed figure whispering her name, her mother's screams as she fought them off. The order had chosen her then, and now they would claim her. Benedict's prayer cut through the chaos, his cross burning the air, and a nun recoiled, her form flickering. Agnes yanked the chalice's chains, the metal snapping, and it fell into the pit, the blood igniting in a blaze of red flame. The figures screamed, Mother Superior clutching her head, and the chamber shook, stones crumbling. They fled, dragging Clara, the pit's flames chasing them, the nuns' laughter a fading echo. But as they reached the undercroft's edge, Agnes's sigil flared, and she knew, the ritual was wounded, but Asmodeus was waking, and her blood was the key to his freedom, or his end. The undercroft tunnels of St. Etheldra's convent were a suffocating maze, their stone walls slick with moisture and pulsing with a faint, unnatural heat. Sister Agnes stumbled through the dark, her habit torn, her wrists searing where the serpent sigil burned. Father Benedict supported Sister Clara, whose wounds bled through her bandages, her face pale but her eyes fierce with defiance. The Liber Asmodeus was tucked under Benedict's arm, its pages heavy with the blood of their last encounter, while Agnes clutched her mother's journal, its revelations about her bloodline a weight she couldn't shake. Behind them, the heart of the serpent chamber smoldered, the chalice's destruction a fleeting victory, but the red-habited nun's laughter still echoed, a taunt that clung to the air like damp rot. We can't stop, Benedict said, his voice hoarse, his leather jacket stained with ash and blood. Mother Superior's regrouping. That pit, it's still active. Clara coughed, wincing as she leaned on him. "She's right," she rasped. "The Order's got backups. They've been planning this for centuries. Agnes, your blood, it's the only thing that can finish it." Agnes's heart clenched, the memory of the chalice's pull, the seductive voice of Asmodeus, still fresh. "I'm not their vessel," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "There's a way to break this without me dying." The Liber Asmodeus said it, a choice, not a sacrifice. They reached a junction, the tunnels branching into darkness. The journal's map was incomplete, but a faint glow emanated from one path, its light red and pulsing. Agnes's sigil flared, guiding her like a cursed compass, and she pointed. "That way," she said, dread pooling in her stomach. "It's calling me." Benedict hesitated, his hand brushing hers, touch that sparked guilt and longing. "If it's a trap, we're walking blind," he said, his eyes searching hers. "But I trust you." Clara snorted, a smirk weak but present. "Romantic, priest. Just don't get us killed." The tunnel led to a low chamber, its ceiling crusted with stalactites that dripped black ichor. At its center was a stone table, carved with the Serpent sigil, and on it lay a pile of ashes, human, Agnes realized, her throat tightening. The air was thick with the scent of charred bone and sulfur, and the walls were painted with scenes of sacrifice, their figures writhing as if alive. A single torch burned, its flame unnaturally steady, casting shadows that seemed to whisper. Agnes approached the table, her sigil pulsing in time with the torch. The ashes stirred, forming a shape, her face, her mother's, its eyes hollow, its mouth moving. "You cannot escape," Agnes staggered back, the journal slipping from her hands, its pages fluttering open to a passage. "The ashes of the pure bind the chain, but their will can break it." Benedict grabbed her arm, his cross raised, but the face dissolved, the ashes scattering. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice tight. "My mother," Agnes whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "She's still here, trapped in their ritual." Clara knelt by the table, her fingers brushing the ashes. "This is a binding sight," she said, her voice low. "The Order uses the dead to strengthen Asmodeus's cage, but also to weaken it when they are ready. Agnes, your bloodline's been their tool all along." Before they could process this, the torch flared, and the paintings on the walls bled, crimson trickling down the stone. A figure appeared in the shadows, the red-habited nun, her void face now a mask of sharp teeth, her hands dripping ichor. "You disturb my rest," she hissed, her voice a chorus of the damned. Benedict chanted, his cross glowing, but the nun laughed, her form splitting into three, each lunging at them. Agnes dodged, grabbing the journal, while Clara slashed with her dagger, her wound slowing her. The chamber shook, stalactites falling, and Agnes's sigil burned, pulling her toward the table. She slammed her hand on the sigil, her blood, smeared from a cut, mixing with the ashes, and the nun screamed, her forms collapsing into one, then vanishing. The chamber stilled, but the air felt heavier, as if Asmodeus himself were watching. Agnes's vision blurred, a whisper in her mind, "Your will is mine." They fled, the journal and Liber Asmodeus their only guides, but Agnes knew, the ashes were a warning, and her faith was crumbling under the weight of her bloodline's curse. The convent's abandoned refectory was a hollow shell, its long tables coated in dust, its air thick with the scent of stale bread and despair. Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara took refuge there, the Undercroft's horrors still fresh, the red-habited nun's scream ringing in their ears. Clara sat slumped against a wall, her bandages soaked, her dagger resting on her lap. Benedict paced, the Liber Asmodeus open on a table, its blood-stained pages a puzzle they couldn't solve. Agnes stood apart, her mother's journal in her hands, the ashes of the binding sight a weight on her soul. Her sigil throbbed, a constant reminder of Asmodeus's claim, and her faith, a flickering flame, felt ready to die. "We're missing something," Benedict said, his voice strained, his eyes flicking to Agnes. "The ashes, the bloodline, it's all connected, but the Liber Asmodeus too cryptic. We need to know what the vessel's will means." Clara coughed, her face pale. "It's her choice," she said, nodding at Agnes. "The Order wants your blood, but the book says you can refuse them. Problem is, no one's ever done it and lived." Agnes's throat tightened. Her mother had tried, and died. The kiss she'd shared with Benedict flashed in her mind, a sin, a rebellion, a tether to life. She met his gaze, and saw the same conflict in his eyes, love warring with duty, desire clashing with vows. "What if my will isn't enough?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What if I'm already his?" Benedict crossed to her, his hand cupping her face, a reckless act in the convent's shadows. "You're not his," he said, his voice fierce. "You're stronger than they know." "I see it, Agnes." He faltered, the words "I love you" unspoken but heavy between them. Clara cleared her throat, her smirk faint. "Get a room, you two. Or at least wait till we're not dying." Agnes pulled away, her cheeks burning, guilt flooding her. "We can't," she whispered, her vows a noose. "Not now. Not here." Benedict's jaw tightened, but he nodded, stepping back. "Then we focus," he said, his voice hard. "The journal, your mother mentioned a chamber, the heart of the Serpent. We found it, but there's more. A second sight, maybe." Agnes opened the journal, her hands trembling, and found a sketch, a tunnel leading to a well of ashes, marked as the Order's true power source. "This," she said, pointing. "It's deeper than the Undercroft. If we destroy it, we might stop them." Before they could plan, a shadow moved at the refectory's entrance. Sister Ruth stepped in, her eyes glowing, her habit dripping blood. "You cannot hide," she hissed, her voice layered with Asmodeus's malice. Behind her, red-robed figures loomed, their daggers raised. Benedict grabbed his cross, Clara her dagger, but Agnes acted first, hurling a chair at Ruth. It struck her chest, staggering her, and the trio fled through a side door, the refectory echoing with Ruth's laughter. They ran, the journal guiding them to a hidden stairwell, steps descending into darkness. As they plunged downward, Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, her mother, standing in a well of ashes, her blood burning as she defied the Order, her scream a promise to protect her daughter. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, Benedict's arm around her. "I'm with you," he whispered, his voice a lifeline. But the doubt lingered, could her will outmatch a demon's, or would love be her downfall? The stairwell beneath the refectory was a throat of stone, swallowing Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara into the convent's deepest secrets. The air grew hotter with each step, thick with the stench of ash and blood, the walls pulsing with the low, guttural chant that seemed to come from the earth itself. Agnes led, her mother's journal open, its sketch of the well of ashes their only map. The Liber Asmodeus weighed heavy under Benedict's arm, its pages a cursed guide, while Clara limped behind, her dagger clenched, her wounds slowing her but not her fire. Agnes's sigil burned, its heat a beacon, drawing her to the heart of the Order's power. "We're close," Agnes said, her voice echoing, her heart pounding with dread and resolve. "The well, it's where they keep the ashes of the vessels. My mother's there." Benedict's hand brushed hers, a silent promise. "We'll end this," he said, his cross glowing faintly, his eyes haunted but determined. Clara's breath was ragged. "Just watch for traps," she said, her voice tight. "The Order guards their secrets with blood." The stairwell opened into a cavernous chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor dominated by a circular well, its edges carved with serpent sigils that glowed red. Ashes swirled within, rising and falling like a living storm, and above it hung a massive chalice, its blood dripping into the well, each drop igniting a flare of flame. Red-robed figures chanted around the well, their faces veiled, Mother Superior at their center, her hands stained with blood, her voice a hypnotic drone. "You're too late," Mother Superior said, her eyes glinting as she saw Agnes. "The well is open." Asmodeus wakes. Agnes's sigil flared, and the ashes formed a face, her mother's, then others, all vessels, their eyes pleading. A voice, Asmodeus's, spoke in her mind, "Your blood completes me." She staggered, the chalice's pull overwhelming, but Benedict's hand steadied her, his prayer cutting through the chant. Clara lunged, her dagger slashing an acolyte's arm, blood spraying. "Break the chalice," she shouted, but a figure tackled her, their dagger piercing her side. She screamed, falling, her blood mixing with the ashes. Benedict fought, his cross burning the air, but the figures were relentless, their blades a blur. Agnes ran for the chalice, dodging a dagger, her hands burning as she gripped its chains. The well roared, flames rising, and the red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her claws raking Agnes's arm. "You are mine," she hissed, her voice a storm. Agnes's vision blurred, her mother's scream echoing, and she yanked the chains, the chalice crashing into the well. The ashes ignited, a blaze of red and black, and the figures screamed, Mother Superior clutching her chest as if struck. The nun vanished, her scream deafening, and the chamber shook, stones falling. They dragged Clara from the chaos, her side bleeding, the well's flames chasing them. As they reached the stairwell, Agnes's sigil cooled, but the voice lingered, "You delay, but you cannot win." The Order was wounded, but the well's power was unbroken, and Agnes's blood was still the key. The stairwell leading from the well of ashes was a suffocating spiral, its stone walls slick with condensation and echoing with the fading roar of the chalice's destruction. Sister Agnes stumbled upward, her habit scorched, her wrist burning where the serpent sigil pulsed, a relentless reminder of Asmodeus's claim. Father Benedict half-carried Sister Clara, whose side bled through her bandages, her face ashen but her grip on her dagger unyielding. The Liber Asmodei and Agnes's mother's journal were tucked under Benedict's arm, their pages heavy with the weight of secrets and blood. The air was thick with ash and sulfur, and the red-habited nun's scream still rang in Agnes's ears, a promise of vengeance that clung to the shadows. "We need to hide," Benedict said, his voice raw, his leather jacket torn and stained. "The Order's not done. That well, it's their heart, but they'll have other sights." Clara coughed, blood flecking her lips. "The old infirmary," she rasped, her voice weak but sharp. "It's abandoned. They won't look there." Agnes nodded, though her heart pounded with doubt. Clara's knowledge of the Order's movements was uncanny, her past as one of them a shadow that refused to fade. But Clara's sacrifice in the well, fighting despite her wounds, kept Agnes's suspicions at bay, for now. They veered toward the infirmary, slipping through the convent's labyrinthine corridors, the fog outside seeping through cracked windows, its whispers blending with the chant that haunted Agnes's mind. The infirmary was a relic of decay, its beds rusted, its walls peeling with mold. The air smelled of antiseptic and rot, and broken vials crunched underfoot. They laid Clara on a cot, her breath shallow, and Agnes tore strips from her habit to bind the new wound, her hands trembling. "You shouldn't have come," Agnes said, her voice soft but heavy. "You're hurt enough." Clara's smirk was faint, her eyes glassy. "Had to," she murmured. "Oh, you, for lying. For everything." Benedict searched the room, finding a dusty medical kit with needles and thread. "We'll stitch her up," he said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying fear. "Then we plan. The Liber Asmodeus, we need to find that vessel's wolf it talks about." As Agnes stitched Clara's side, her needle shaking, a vision gripped her. Her mother, Eliza, in this same infirmary, her wrists bandaged but bleeding, whispering to a young Agnes, "Run, if they come for you." The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, her sigil flaring. "She was here," she whispered, tears falling. "My mother, they tried to break her here." Clara gripped her hand, her touch weak but firm. "She fought them," she said. "Like you're fighting. Don't let them win." Benedict finished stitching, his hands bloodied, and turned to the Liber Asmodeus, its pages open to a cryptic passage. "The vessels will defy the blood, but the heart must burn." He frowned, his cross glinting in the dim light. "It's not just your blood, Agnes. It's your choice, your heart." "But what does it mean to burn?" Before they could answer, a shadow moved outside the infirmary's broken window, a red-robed figure, silent but watching. Agnes's sigil burned, and the air grew heavy, the scent of belladonna rising. The figure vanished, but a whisper curled through the room, soft and venomous, "Your time is near." The red-habited nun's presence lingered, and Agnes knew, survival had a cost, and the order was ready to collect. The old infirmary was a fragile fortress, its rusted beds and peeling walls a poor defense against the order of the Serpent's hunt. Sister Agnes sat by Sister Clara's cot, the Liber Asmodeus open on her lap, its blood-stained pages a puzzle that refused to yield. Father Benedict stood guard at the door, his dagger in hand, his cross a faint glow in the gloom. Clara slept fitfully, her wound stitched but her fever rising, her breath a laboured rasp. The fog outside pressed against the windows, its whispers blending with the red-habited nun's taunt, and Agnes's sigil throbbed, a tether to Asmodeus that threatened to pull her apart. "We're missing something," Agnes said, her voice low, her fingers tracing the Liber Asmodeus' cryptic words, "The heart must burn. It's not just my blood. It's me, my will, my love." The word caught in her throat, the memory of Benedict's kiss, a sin that burned brighter than her sigil. Benedict turned, his eyes meeting hers, soft but heavy with guilt. "Love isn't a weakness," he said, his voice quiet but fierce. "It's what keeps us fighting. You're not alone, Agnes." She looked away, her vows a cage around her heart. "But it's a danger," she whispered. "If I choose you, if I choose us, it might be what they want. Asmodeus, he feeds on desire." Benedict crossed to her, kneeling, his hand brushing her cheek. "Then let him choke on it," he said, his voice raw. We're stronger than he is. Together. The air shifted, a chill cutting through the warmth of his touch, and Clara stirred, her eyes opening, clouded with fever. He's right, she croaked, her smirk weak. But don't get cocky. The Order's playing you both. Love's a weapon they know how to twist. Agnes's stomach twisted, Clara's words echoing her fears. She turned back to the Liber Asmodeus, finding a new passage, written in a trembling hand. The vessel's heart burns with defiance, but the flame consumes all it touches. Her breath caught. Did it mean her love for Benedict would destroy them, or was it the key to breaking Asmodeus's chain? Before she could speak, the infirmary's door rattled, a slow, deliberate knock echoing. Benedict stood, his dagger raised, and Agnes clutched the book, her sigil flaring. The knock came again, followed by a voice, Ruth's, layered with Asmodeus's malice, "Open the door, pure soul." Clara struggled to sit, her dagger in hand, her face pale but fierce. "Trap," she whispered. "Back exit, through the storeroom." They moved, Benedict supporting Clara, Agnes leading with the book and journal. The storeroom was a clutter of broken crates and cobwebs, its rear door rusted but intact. As they reached it, the infirmary's main door splintered, red-robed figures pouring in, Ruth at their lead, her eyes glowing, her dagger dripping ichor. "You cannot run," she hissed, her voice a chorus. Agnes kicked the rear door open, and they fled into the fog, the convent's corridors a blur. Ruth's laughter chased them, blending with the red-habited nuns, and Agnes's sigil burned, pulling her toward a destination she didn't know. They reached the cloister, its arches looming, and Agnes's vision blurred, her memory surging, her mother, hiding in these same arches, whispering a prayer to protect her daughter. The memory faded, leaving Agnes gasping, Benedict's arm around her, his love a rebellion against the demon's claim. The cloister of St. Etheldra's convent was a labyrinth of fog and stone, its arches swallowing Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara as they fled the infirmary's ambush. The Liber Asmodeus and Agnes's mother's journal were clutched in Agnes's arms, their secrets of fragile hope against the Order of the Serpent's pursuit. Clara limped, her fever spiking, her dagger trembling in her hand, while Benedict's cross glowed, his prayers a low murmur against the red-habited nuns' laughter echoing through the fog. Agnes's sigil burned, its heat guiding her, cursed compass leading them back to the crypt, the convent's dark heart. "We can't keep running," Benedict said, his voice tight, his dagger blooded from a glancing blow in the infirmary. "We need to face them, find their next move." Clara nodded, her breath ragged. "The crypt," she said, her voice faint. "It's where they store their relics. If there's another chalice, it's there." Agnes's heart pounded, the crypt's tombs haunting her memory, Clara's blood, Benedict's fight, her own capture. But the journal's map marked a hidden vault within the crypt, labeled the Serpent's Reliquary. "It's our only chance," she said, her voice steady despite the fear choking her. They descended into the crypt, its air cold and thick with the scent of bone and earth. The tombs loomed, their angel carvings weeping dust, and the silence was broken by a faint chant, rising from deeper within. Agnes's sigil flared, and the journal slipped, its pages open into a passage. The reliquary holds the serpent's heart, but only the pure can touch it. Her mother's handwriting trembled, as if written in fear. The vault was hidden behind a tomb, its stone door etched with the serpent's sigil. Benedict pried it open, revealing a small chamber lit by a single torch, its walls lined with shelves of relics, bones, vials of blood, and a silver chalice, smaller than the others, its blood glowing faintly. At the center was a pedestal, holding a blackened heart, shriveled but pulsing, its beat matching Agnes's sigil. "The serpent's heart," Clara whispered, her face pale. "It's Asmodeus's anchor. Destroy it, and you might stop him." Agnes approached, her sigil burning, and the heart stirred, its pulse quickening. A vision gripped her, a 17th century nun, the first vessel, binding Asmodeus with her blood, her heart torn out to seal the pact. The vision faded, and Agnes gasped, realizing the heart was hers, in another life. "It's me," she whispered. "I've always been part of this." Before they could act, the torch flared, and red-robed figures emerged, Mother Superior at their lead, her dagger glinting. "You found our treasure," she said, her smile cold. "But it's too late. The heart wakes." Benedict raised his cross, Clara her dagger, but the figures surged, their blades a blur. Agnes grabbed the chalice, its blood scalding her hands, and hurled it at the heart, the liquid igniting in a blaze of red flame. The heart screamed, a sound that shook the vault, and Mother Superior staggered, blood trickling from her eyes. The figures fell, clutching their heads, and the red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her claws slashing at Agnes. Benedict's prayer roared, his cross burning, and the nun recoiled, her scream deafening. They fled, the vault collapsing, the heart's flames chasing them. As they reached the crypt's edge, Agnes's sigil cooled, but the heart's pulse lingered in her mind, a warning: destroy it fully, or become it. The crypt of St. Etheldra's convent was a collapsing tomb, its stone walls crumbling as flames from the serpent's reliquary licked at the air. Sister Agnes ran, her lungs burning, the serpent sigil on her wrist pulsing with a heat that threatened to consume her. Father Benedict dragged Sister Clara, her side bleeding through her bandages, her face pale but her eyes sharp with defiance. The Liber Asmodeus and Agnes's mother's journal were clutched in Agnes's arms, their secrets a fragile shield against the order of the Serpent's wrath. The red-habited nun's scream echoed behind them, a sound that clawed at Agnes's soul, and the pulsing heart of Asmodeus lingered in her mind, its beat a promise of her doom. "We can't go back to the convent," Benedict said, his voice hoarse, his leather jacket scorched from the fire. "They'll be waiting. We need a new hiding place." Clara coughed, blood staining her lips. "The forest," she rasped, her grip on her dagger weak but unyielding. "There's a cave, near the chapel. I hid there once, when I ran from the order." Agnes's heart twisted, Clara's past a shadow that loomed larger with each revelation. But the crypt's ceiling groaned, stones falling, and there was no time for doubt. They fled through a side tunnel, its walls slick with ichor, the air thick with a stench of ash and blood. The tunnel opened to the blackwood forest, the fog a grey shroud that swallowed their footsteps, its whispers blending with the nun's laughter. The cave was a jagged wound in the earth, its entrance hidden by thorns and moss. Inside, the air was damp and cold, the walls glittering with quartz that caught the faint light of Clara's lantern. They laid Clara on a flat stone, her breath shallow, and Agnes tore more of her habit to bind the wound, her hands shaking. "You're burning up," Agnes said, her voice soft but urgent, pressing a damp cloth to Clara's forehead. Clara's smirk was faint, her eyes glassy. "Takes more than a demon to kill me," she murmured, but her voice wavered, betraying her fear. Benedict searched the cave, finding a small cache of supplies, bread, water, a tattered blanket, left from Clara's past refuge. "You've been planning this for years," he said, his voice low, his eyes narrowing. "What else haven't you told us?" Clara's gaze dropped, guilt flickering. "Enough to keep us alive," she said, her voice sharp despite her weakness. "Focus on the book, priest. It's our only shot." Agnes opened the Liber Asmodeus, its pages heavy with blood and ink, and found a passage. "The heart of the serpent beats with the vessel's blood, but its destruction requires the vessel's soul." Her breath caught. Did it mean her death, or something worse? The journal offered no comfort, its final pages scrawled with her mother's despair, "I failed Agnes. The heart will take her too." Before they could discuss, the cave's entrance darkened, a shadow moving in the fog. Agnes's sigil flared, and a voice, Ruth's, layered with Asmodeus's malice, hissed from the dark, "You cannot hide." Benedict raised his cross, Clara gripped her dagger, but the shadow vanished, leaving a single red petal, belladonna, on the cave floor. The air grew heavy, and the red-habited nuns' laughter curled through the quartz, a promise of death that shattered their refuge. The cave in the Blackwood Forest was a fragile sanctuary, its quartz walls reflecting the flickering light of Clara's lantern, its air thick with the scent of damp earth and fear. Sister Agnes sat by Sister Clara, the Liber Asmodeus open on her lap, its cryptic warning about the serpent's heart haunting her. Father Benedict stood at the cave's entrance, his dagger in hand, his cross a faint glow against the fog's grey tide. Clara's fever raged, her wound seeping, but her eyes burned with a fierce will to survive. Agnes's sigil throbbed, its heated tether to Asmodeus, and the red-habited nun's petal lay on the floor, a taunt that poisoned their fragile trust. "We can't stay here," Benedict said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the fog. "Ruth's tracking us. The Order knows we're close to stopping them." Clara coughed, wincing as she sat up. "The heart," she rasped, her voice weak but urgent. "It's in the reliquary, but it's not just a relic. It's alive, tied to Agnes. Destroy it, and you might kill her too." Agnes's stomach twisted, the journal's words, "The heart will take her," echoing Clara's warning. "Then we find another way," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "The Liber Asmodeus talks about the vessel's soul, not death. I can choose to fight." Benedict knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers, a touch that sparked guilt and longing. "You're not dying," he said, his voice fierce. "I won't let that happen." Clara's eyes narrowed, her smirk gone. "Careful, priest," she said, her voice sharp. "Love's what got her mother killed. The Order used it, twisted it. They'll do the same to you." Agnes pulled away, her vows a cage, but Benedict's words lingered, a rebellion against her fate. She turned to the Liber Asmodeus, finding a new passage, "The vessel's soul burns with defiance, but betrayal cuts deeper than any blade." Her breath caught. Betrayal, from whom? Clara's past loomed, her secrets a constant shadow. Before they could speak, Clara stiffened, her hand slipping under her blanket, pulling out a small, folded parchment. She hid it quickly, but Agnes saw, her heart sinking. "What's that?" Agnes demanded, her voice sharp. Clara's face hardened, guilt flashing. "Nothing," she said, too fast. "Just something I kept. From the Order." Benedict stood, his dagger glinting. "Show us," he said, his voice cold, the trust between them fraying. Clara hesitated, then unfolded the parchment, a list of names, Agnes is at the top, marked with the Serpent sigil. It's old, Clara said, her voice defensive. From when I was with them. I kept it to protect you. Agnes's blood ran cold. You knew I was their target, she whispered, betrayal cutting deep. All this time. I'm trying to fix it. Clara snapped, her voice breaking. I led you to the heart, the reliquary, everything. Benedict grabbed the parchment, his eyes scanning it. This isn't old, he said, his voice low. The ink's fresh. You've been in contact with them. Clara lunged, her dagger flashing, but her wound slowed her, and Benedict disarmed her, pinning her to the stone. I didn't betray you. Clara screamed, tears streaming. They forced me, threatened my sister. I had no choice. Agnes staggered back, the Liber Asmodeus falling, its pages fluttering. Clara's betrayal was a blade in her heart, sharper than any dagger. The cave's walls seemed to close in, and the red-habited nuns' laughter echoed, louder now, as if feeding on their fracture. Before they could act, the fog outside stirred, red-robed figures emerging, Ruth at their lead, her eyes glowing. You've brought us the pure soul, she hissed, her voice a chorus. Thank you, Clara. Agnes's sigil flared, and the cave shook, quartz cracking, as the order closed in, Clara's betrayal the blade that cut deepest. The cave in the Blackwood Forest was a shattered haven, its quartz walls splintering as the Order of the Serpent surged inside, their red robes a tide of blood in the fog. Sister Agnes stood frozen, the Liber Asmodeus at her feet, her mother's journal clutched to her chest, Clara's betrayal a wound that bled her trust. Father Benedict held Sister Clara pinned, her dagger on the floor, her tear-streaked face a mix of guilt and defiance. Sister Ruth led the acolytes, her glowing eyes locked on Agnes, her voice layered with Asmodeus's malice, the pure soul is ours. The red-habited nun flickered in the shadows, her toothy smile a promise of agony, and Agnes's sigil burned, pulling her toward a fate she couldn't escape. Run! Benedict shouted, releasing Clara and grabbing Agnes's arm, his cross glowing as he swung it at Ruth. The silver burned her skin, and she hissed, staggering back, but the acolytes surged, their daggers flashing. Clara scrambled for her dagger, her wound slowing her, but she slashed an acolyte's arm, blood spraying. I didn't want this, she screamed, her voice raw, her eyes on Agnes. I'm sorry. Agnes's heart twisted, but there was no time for forgiveness. She grabbed the Liber Asmodeus, and they fled deeper into the cave, its tunnels twisting into darkness. The quartz walls pulsed red, reflecting the sigil's heat, and the air grew hot, thick with the stench of sulfur and blood. Ruth's laughter chased them, blending with the red-habited nuns, a chorus that drowned Agnes's prayers. The tunnel opened to a chasm, its floor lost in shadow, a rickety rope bridge spanning the void. Benedict tested it, the ropes creaking, and urged Agnes across. Go, he said, his voice urgent, his hand steadying her. Agnes crossed, her heart pounding, the journal and book slipping in her sweat-slick hands. Clara followed, her limp slowing her, blood dripping from her side. Benedict brought up the rear, his cross raised, but the acolytes reached the chasm, Ruth's voice roaring, "You cannot escape the serpent." The bridge swayed, ropes fraying, and an acolyte lunged, his dagger slashing Benedict's arm. He grunted, blood seeping, but swung his cross, burning the acolyte's face. The man screamed, falling into the void, his cry echoing. Clara slashed another, her dagger trembling, but Ruth raised her hand, and the chasm roared, a hot wind rising, the red-habited nun appearing on the bridge, her claws raking the ropes. Agnes reached the other side, turning to help Clara, but the bridge snapped, one rope breaking. Clara stumbled, nearly falling, and Agnes grabbed her arm, pulling her to safety. Benedict leaped, barely making it, the bridge collapsing into the dark. The acolyte stopped at the chasm's edge, Ruth's eyes glowing, her voice a hiss, "The heart waits for you." They ran, the tunnel narrowing, the walls closing in. The sigil guided Agnes, its heat a cursed beacon, and they emerged in a new chamber, its floor inlaid with a massive serpent sigil, its eyes glowing red. At its center was a stone pedestal, empty but pulsing, as if waiting for the heart they'd seen in the reliquary. The air was thick with the scent of belladonna, and the red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her voice a seductive purr, "You bring me closer." Agnes's vision blurred, a memory surging, her mother, standing in this chamber, her blood burning as she carved a cross into the pedestal, weakening Asmodeus's hold. The vision faded, and Agnes gasped, realizing the pedestal was the final anchor. She lunged for it, her sigil flaring, but Ruth's acolytes burst in, their daggers raised, and Clara, her face torn with guilt, stepped forward, her dagger trembling, as if to fight or betray them again. The chamber beneath the blackwood forest was a pulsing wound, its floor inlaid with a massive serpent sigil, its glowing red eyes boring into Sister Agnes's soul. The stone pedestal at its center throbbed, an empty anchor waiting for Asmodeus's heart, its power pulling at the serpent sigil on her wrist. Father Benedict stood ready, his silver cross raised, blood seeping from his slashed arm. Sister Clara wavered, her dagger trembling, her tear-streaked face torn between guilt and defiance as red-robed acolytes of the Order of the Serpent surged in, led by Sister Ruth, her glowing eyes a beacon of demonic malice. The red-habited nun loomed in the shadows, her toothy smile a slash of hunger, her voice whispering in Agnes's mind, "Choose, pure soul." The Liber Asmodei and her mother's journal lay at Agnes's feet, their secrets her only weapon. "You betrayed us," Agnes said, her voice raw, her eyes locked on Clara. "How could you?" Clara's dagger shook, her voice breaking. "I didn't want this," she cried. "They have my sister, threatened her life. I had no choice." She turned, her blade slashing an acolyte's arm, blood spraying, her action a desperate plea for redemption. Benedict lunged at Ruth, his cross burning her skin, but she dodged, her dagger slashing his side. He grunted, blood staining his leather jacket, but swung again, his Latin prayer a roar, Domin, silver numbers. The acolytes closed in, their blades a blur, and Agnes grabbed the Liber Asmodei, its pages heavy with blood, searching for a way to break the pedestal's power. Clara fought, her wounds slowing her, her dagger clashing with an acolyte's. "Agnes, the pedestal," she shouted, her voice hoarse. "It's the anchor, destroy it." She tackled Ruth, their blades locking, but Ruth's strength was unnatural, her eyes glowing brighter. Clara screamed as Ruth's dagger pierced her shoulder, blood pooling, but she held on, giving Agnes time. Agnes knelt by the pedestal, her sigil flaring, and opened her mother's journal, finding a sketch of a cross carved into a similar stone, weakening Asmodeus's hold. She drew a stolen dagger, her hands trembling, and began to carve, the stone resisting, sparks flying. The red-habited nun appeared, her claws raking Agnes's back, her voice a hiss, "You cannot defy me." Agnes's vision blurred, her memory surging, her mother, carving this same cross, her blood sealing it, her scream a defiance that echoed through time. The cross took shape, and the pedestal cracked, the sigil's eyes dimming. Ruth screamed, her form convulsing, and the acolytes staggered, their chants faltering. Benedict seized the moment, his cross burning an acolyte's face, while Clara slashed Ruth's leg, collapsing as blood poured from her shoulder. Agnes finished the cross, her blood, smeared from a cut, mixing with the stone, and the chamber shook, the pedestal splitting, the hot wind howling from the crack. The red-habited nun roared, her form dissolving, and Ruth fled, her acolytes stumbling after her. Benedict helped Clara to her feet, her face pale, her breath shallow. Agnes stood, the journal and book in her arms, her sigil cooling but the nun's whisper lingering. This is not the end. Clara's redemption had come at a cost, and the order was wounded but not broken. They fled the chamber, the forest's fog swallowing them, but Agnes knew, the heart still beat, and her choice was far from made. The Blackwood Forest was a labyrinth of fog and thorns, its gnarled trees clawing at the sky, its whispers blending with the red-habited nun's fading laughter. Sister Agnes, Father Benedict, and Sister Clara stumbled through its shadows, their bodies battered, their spirits fraying. Clara leaned on Benedict, her shoulder bleeding, her fever spiking, her dagger lost in the chamber's chaos. Agnes clutched the Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal, their pages a map to a fate she couldn't escape. Her serpent sigil throbbed, tethered to Asmodeus, and the memory of Clara's betrayal, her deal with the order to save her sister, cut deeper than any blade. "We need shelter," Benedict said, his voice tight, blood seeping from his side, his cross dimming in the fog. "Clara's not going to make it without rest." Clara coughed, her smirk gone. "Don't count me out," she rasped, but her eyes were glassy, her strength fading. Agnes pointed to a faint light through the trees, a derelict hunter's cabin, its windows dark, its roof sagging. They reached it, the door creaking open to reveal a dusty interior, its air thick with the scent of mildew and old blood. They laid Clara on a rotted mattress, Agnes tearing her habit to bind the new wound, her hands steady but her heart torn. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice low, her eyes on Clara. "About your sister?" Clara's breath hitched, tears falling. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "I joined the order to save her, thought I could control it. When I ran, they found her. Said they'd kill her if I didn't help them. I never wanted to hurt you, Agnes." Benedict stood by the door, his dagger ready, his face hard. "You should have trusted us," he said, his voice cold but softening. "We're in this together now." Agnes nodded, her trust fractured but not broken. She opened the Liber Asmodeus, its pages heavy with menace, and found a passage. The vessel's choice is sealed by blood, but the heart's betrayal opens the gate. Her stomach twisted. Clara's betrayal had strengthened Asmodeus, but her fight against the order had weakened him. Could redemption balance the scales? The journal offered a new clue, a sketch of a serpent's gate, a portal in the convent's deepest vault, where Asmodeus could cross into the world. "This is their endgame," Agnes said, her voice firm. "They're opening a gate. We have to stop it." Before they could plan, the cabin's windows rattled, a low growl rising from the fog. Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, her mother, standing before a glowing gate, her blood burning as she sealed it, her scream a sacrifice for her daughter. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, Benedict's hand on her shoulder, his touch a lifeline. The growl became footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Red-robed figures circled the cabin, their daggers glinting, Ruth's voice hissing. The pure soul cannot hide. The red-habited nun appeared in the doorway, her form solid, her smile wide. Agnes's sigil burned, and she knew the gate was near, and Clara's confession had bought them time, but not enough. The hunter's cabin was a crumbling fortress, its walls shuddering as the Order of the Serpent closed in, their red robes a tide of blood in the fog. Sister Agnes stood by the rotted mattress, the Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal in her arms, her serpent sigil blazing, pulling her toward a fate she couldn't outrun. Father Benedict barred the door, his dagger and cross ready, blood dripping from his side. Sister Clara struggled to sit, her shoulder bandaged but bleeding, her face pale, her eyes burning with a desperate need for redemption. The red-habited nun filled the doorway, her toothy smile a slash of malice, her voice a seductive purr. The gate awaits. "We can't fight them here," Benedict said, his voice urgent, his eyes scanning the cabin. "There's a back window, narrow, but we can make it." Clara grabbed a broken chair leg, her breath ragged. "Go," she said, her voice firm. "I'll hold them off." Agnes's heart clenched. "No," she said, her voice breaking. "You're coming with us." Clara's smirk returned, faint but fierce. "Not this time," she said. "I owe you this, Agnes. Go, stop the gate." Before Agnes could argue, the door splintered, red-robed acolytes pouring in, Ruth at their lead, her eyes glowing. Clara swung the chair leg, cracking an acolyte's skull, blood spraying, but Ruth's dagger slashed her arm, and she fell, her scream echoing. Benedict grabbed Agnes, pulling her toward the window, the Liber Asmodeus slipping but caught by her trembling hands. They squeezed through, thorns tearing their skin, and ran into the fog, Clara's screams fading behind them. The forest was alive, branches snapping, the red-habited nuns' laughter chasing them. Agnes's sigil guided them, its heat a cursed beacon, and they reached the convent's outer wall, a hidden grate leading to the deepest vault, the Serpent's Gate. The vault was a cavern of shadow, its walls carved with serpentine runes that glowed red, its center dominated by a massive stone arch, its surface rippling like water, a portal pulsing with heat. Mother Superior stood before it, her hands raised, a new chalice in her grasp, its blood dripping into the arch, each drop widening the ripple. Red-robed figures chanted, their voices a drone that shook the earth, and the gate began to glow, a horned shadow forming within. "You're too late," Mother Superior said, her smile cold, her eyes glinting. "The pure soul's blood will open the gate." Agnes's sigil flared, and the chalice's pull surged, Asmodeus's voice roaring in her mind. "Come to me," she staggered, the journal falling, its pages open to a final note. The gate closes with the vessel's heart, not her blood. Her mother's sacrifice, her heart, her will, had sealed it once. Could Agnes do the same? Benedict raised his cross, chanting, but the figures surged, their daggers flashing. Agnes lunged for the chalice, dodging a blade, her hands burning as she grabbed it. The gate roared, the shadow solidifying, and the red-habited nun appeared, her claws raking Agnes's arm. Benedict's prayer cut through, his cross burning, and the nun recoiled, but Mother Superior laughed, her chalice spilling blood, the gate widening. Agnes hurled the chalice into the arch, the blood igniting in a blaze of red flame. The gate screamed, the shadow dissolving, and the figures fell, clutching their heads. Mother Superior staggered, blood trickling from her eyes, and fled into a side tunnel, her acolytes following. The vault shook, stones falling, and Benedict pulled Agnes back, his arm around her, his love a shield against the chaos. They fled, the gate's flames chasing them, but Agnes's sigil cooled, and she knew, the gate was wounded, but Asmodeus was closer than ever. The vault's collapse was a thunderous roar, its stones burying the Serpent's gate in a cloud of dust and flame. Sister Agnes and Father Benedict stumbled into the Blackwood Forest, their bodies bloodied, their spirits battered. The Liber Asmodeus and Agnes's mother's journal were clutched in Agnes's arms, their secrets a fragile hope against the Order's relentless hunt. Clara was gone, her sacrifice in the cabin a wound that bled Agnes's trust, her redemption a bittersweet light in the dark. Agnes's serpent sigil throbbed, its heat a fading echo of Asmodeus's pull, but the red-habited nun's laughter lingered, a promise that the demon was not defeated. "We stopped the gate," Benedict said, his voice raw, his side bleeding, his cross dim but unyielding. "But Mother Superior's still out there. The heart, it's still beating." Agnes nodded, her heart heavy with her mother's sacrifice, her own choice looming. The journal's final words, "The gate closes with the vessel's heart," echoed, a riddle she couldn't solve. "It's me," she said, her voice trembling. "My will, my heart. But what does it cost?" Benedict took her hand, his touch a rebellion against their vows, his eyes fierce. "Whatever it costs, we pay it together," he said, his voice steady, his love a fire that burned brighter than Asmodeus's. They reached the forest's edge, the convent spires looming through the fog, a fortress of secrets and sin. The Liber Asmodeus offered one last clue, the vessel's heart defies the serpent, but the flame consumes the beloved. Agnes's breath caught. Did it mean Benedict's death, or her own? The kiss they'd shared, the love they fought for, was it the key, or the trap? A scream cut through the fog, Clara's, faint but alive, coming from the convent's cloister. Agnes's heart leaped, hope warring with doubt. "She's alive," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We have to find her." Benedict nodded, his dagger ready, but his eyes were troubled. "It could be a trap," he said. "The Order knows how to use her." They entered the cloister, its arches choked with fog, its stones slick with blood. Clara lay sprawled, her wounds fresh, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she gasped, blood bubbling on her lips. "They used me. The heart, it's in the tower. They are finishing it, now." Agnes knelt, tears falling, her trust in Clara shattered but her compassion unbroken. "We'll stop them," she said, her voice firm, her sigil flaring as if answering Clara's pain. Benedict helped Clara sit, his cross glowing, but the fog stirred, red-robed figures emerging, Mother Superior at their lead, a final chalice in her hands, its blood glowing. "The pure soul's heart is ready," she said, her smile cold, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Agnes stood, the Liber Asmodeus open, her mother's journal a shield. Her sigil burned, and a vision gripped her, her mother, sealing the gate with her heart, her love for Agnes the flame that burned Asmodeus back. The vision faded, and Agnes knew, her choice was here, her heart the weapon, but the cost would be everything. The figures surged, daggers flashing, and Benedict's prayer roared, his cross a beacon. Clara lunged, her last strength spent, her body falling as she slashed an acolyte. Agnes faced Mother Superior, her heart burning with defiance, and the tower loomed, the heart of Asmodeus waiting, the pure soul's choice a fire that would consume them all, or set them free. The cloister of St. Etheldra's convent was a slaughterhouse of fog and blood, its arches looming like the jaws of a beast. Sister Agnes stood frozen, the Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal clutched to her chest, her serpent sigil blazing, a fire that threatened to consume her. Father Benedict fought beside her, his silver cross a beacon in the gloom, his dagger slashing at red-robed acolytes of the Order of the Serpent. Sister Clara lay crumpled on the stones, her blood pooling, her final act, slashing an acolyte to protect Agnes, a flicker of redemption in her betrayal's shadow. Mother Superior towered before them, a new chalice in her hands, its glowing blood a pulse of Asmodeus's power, a cold smile promising oblivion. The bell tower loomed, its spire piercing the fog, the heart of the demon beating within, calling Agnes to her destiny. "You cannot stop the serpent," Mother Superior intoned, her voice a venomous hymn, her eyes locked on Agnes. "Your heart opens the gate. Embrace it, pure soul." Agnes's knees trembled, the sigil's heat pulling her toward the tower, Asmodeus's voice roaring in her mind, "You are mine," but her mother's sacrifice, sealing the gate with her heart, burned brighter, a defiance she clung to. "I choose my own fate," she spat, her voice raw, her hands tightening on the journal. Benedict dispatched an acolyte, blood spraying, and grabbed Agnes's arm, his eyes fierce. "We end this now," he said, his voice hoarse, his love a shield against the demon's pull. He turned to Clara, kneeling by her side, but her breath was gone, her eyes glassy, her dagger still in her hand. "She's dead," he whispered, his voice breaking, his cross dimming. Agnes's heart shattered, Clara's sacrifice a wound she'd carry forever. "She gave us time," she said, tears falling, her resolve hardening. "We go to the tower." Mother Superior laughed, the chalice's blood flaring, and the acolytes surged, their daggers a blur. Benedict fought, his cross burning their skin, but a blade nicked his side, blood seeping through his leather jacket. Agnes ran, dodging a dagger, the journal guiding her to the tower's base, its door carved with the serpent sigil. She pushed it open, the air inside hot and thick with sulfur, the stairs spiraling upward, each step pulsing with the heart's beat. The tower was a crucible of shadow and flame, its walls etched with runes that bled red, its bell silent but trembling, as if alive. At the top, a stone altar held the heart of Asmodeus, black, shriveled, but beating, its rhythm matching Agnes's sigil. The red-habited nun stood beside it, her form solid, her toothy smile a slash of hunger, her voice a seductive purr, "Welcome home." Benedict reached her, blooded but unyielding, his cross raised. "Stay back," he warned, his Latin prayer a roar, but the nun laughed, her claws raking the air, the heart's beat growing louder. Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, her mother, standing here, her heart burning as she defied Asmodeus, her blood sealing the gate. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, her choice clear but terrifying. Mother Superior entered, the chalice glowing, her acolytes behind her. "The heart waits," she said, her voice cold. "Your blood, your love, it's all his." Agnes faced the altar, her heart afire, and knew the tower was her battlefield, and her choice would save them, or damn them all. The bell tower's summit was a furnace of blood and shadow, its air thick with the stench of sulfur and the pulsing beat of Asmodeus's heart. Sister Agnes stood before the stone altar, the blackened heart throbbing, its rhythm a siren call that matched the serpent sigil on her wrist. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal lay at her feet, their secrets a fragile hope against the Order of the Serpent's triumph. Father Benedict fought at the tower's edge, his cross burning red-robed acolytes, his dagger slick with blood, his side bleeding but his will unbroken. Mother Superior held the chalice, its glowing blood dripping onto the altar, each drop strengthening the heart's beat. The red-habited nun circled Agnes, her toothy smile glinting, her voice a seductive whisper, "Give me your heart, and live forever." Agnes's knees buckled, the sigil's heat overwhelming, Asmodeus' temptation a velvet blade in her mind. She saw a life with Benedict, free, loved, unbound by vows, but the price was her soul, her world burned to ash. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling, her mother's defiance a spark in her chest. "I won't be your vessel." Mother Superior laughed, her chalice flaring. "You have no choice," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Your love for him," she nodded at Benedict, "is your weakness. Asmodeus feeds on it." Benedict roared, dispatching an acolyte, his cross glowing, but a blade slashed his arm, blood spraying. He staggered, his eyes meeting Agnes's, his love a fire that burned through her guilt. "You're stronger than this," he shouted, his voice raw, his prayer cutting through the chant, "Exorcismus te, omnis immunda spiritus." The red-habited nun hissed, her form flickering, but the heart's beat grew louder, the wounds on the walls bleeding faster. Agnes's vision blurred, a memory surging, her mother, Eliza, facing this same heart, her love for Agnes the flame that weakened Asmodeus, her blood a seal that cost her life. Agnes grabbed the Liber Asmodei, its pages heavy, and found a passage. The vessel's heart burns with defiance, but the beloved's blood seals the chain. Her breath caught. Did it mean Benedict's death, or her own? She lunged for the chalice, dodging the nun's claws, her hands burning as she grabbed it. Mother Superior slashed with a dagger, nicking Agnes's arm, blood dripping onto the altar, the heart flaring brighter. Agnes screamed, hurling the chalice at the heart, its blood igniting in a blaze of red flame. The tower shook, the rooms dimming, and the nun roared, her form destabilizing, but Mother Superior seized Agnes, her dagger at her throat. "You cannot stop him," Mother Superior hissed, her voice a chorus of malice. "Your heart is his." Benedict tackled her, the dagger falling, and they fought, blood and steel a blur. Agnes knelt by the altar, her sigil flaring, and carved a cross into the heart, her blood mixing with the stone, her mother's prayer echoing in her mind. The heart screamed, cracking, and the tower shuddered, stones falling, the nun's form dissolving into ash. The acolytes fled, Mother Superior vanishing into the chaos, but the heart still beat, weaker but alive. Benedict pulled Agnes to her feet, his arm around her, his blood mingling with hers. "We're not done," he said, his voice hoarse, his love a lifeline. They staggered down the tower, the heart's pulse fading but not gone, the nun's whisper lingering, "You only delay." Agnes's choice had wounded Asmodeus, but the cost was mounting, and her heart was still the key. The bell tower's collapse was a thunderous roar, its stones raining into the cloister below, burying the heart of Asmodeus in dust and flame. Sister Agnes and Father Benedict stumbled into the fog-choked courtyard, their bodies bloodied, their spirits fraying. The Liber Asmodei and Agnes's mother's journal were clutched in Agnes's arms, their secrets a fragile shield against the Order's wrath. Clara's body lay behind them, a sacrifice a wound that bled Agnes's heart, a redemption a light in the dark. Agnes's serpent sigil throbbed, its heat a fading echo of the heart's pulse, but the red-habited nun's whisper lingered, a promise that the demon was not defeated. "We heard them," Benedict said, his voice raw, blood seeping from his arm and side, his cross dim but unyielding. "But the heart's still alive. We need to find it, finish this." Agnes nodded, her heart heavy with her mother's sacrifice, the Liber Asmodeus warning, the beloved's blood seals the chain, a riddle she feared to solve. "It's me," she said, her voice trembling. "My heart, my choice. But what if it means losing you?" Benedict took her hand, his touch a rebellion against their vows, his eyes fierce. "You won't lose me," he said, his voice steady. "We do this together, Agnes. Always." They hid in the convent's ruined chapel, its stained glass windows shattered, its altar cracked, the air thick with incense and ash. Agnes opened the Liber Asmodeus, its pages heavy with blood, and found a final passage. The vessel's heart defies the serpent, but the beloved's sacrifice closes the gate forever. Her breath caught, tears falling. Benedict's blood, his life, was the price, and her love for him was the trap Asmodeus had woven. "We can't trust the book," Agnes said, her voice breaking. "It's his words, his game. There's another way." Benedict knelt beside her, his hand cupping her face, his love a fire that burned through her fear. "If it's my blood, so be it," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "I'd give it for you, Agnes. For the world." Before she could argue, a scream echoed from the cloister, Mother Superior's, sharp and triumphant, coming from the crypt below. "She's found it," Agnes whispered, her sigil flaring, the heart pulse surging in her mind. "They are moving the heart." They ran, the crypt's entrance a gaping wound in the earth, its air cold and thick with the scent of bone and blood. The tombs loomed, their angel carvings weeping dust, and at the crypt's heart was a new altar, the heart of Asmodeus beating, stronger now, surrounded by red-robed acolytes. Mother Superior stood before it, a dagger in her hand, her eyes glowing with Asmodeus's power. "You're too late," she said, her smile cold. The heart wakes, and the gate opens. Agnes's sigil flared, and the heart's pulse roared, Asmodeus's voice tempting her, "Give me your beloved, and rule with me." She staggered, Benedict's arm steadying her, his cross glowing, his prayer a lifeline. The acolytes surged, daggers flashing, and Benedict fought, his blood spilling, each drop a step closer to the book's prophecy. Agnes lunged for the heart, her dagger raised, her mother's sacrifice guiding her. The red-habited nun appeared, her claws raking Agnes's mind, but Agnes carved a cross into the heart, her blood burning, the crypt shaking. Mother Superior screamed, the acolytes falling, and the heart cracked, its pulse faltering, but not stopping. Benedict collapsed, his blood pooling, his cross falling from his hand. Agnes screamed, kneeling beside him, her heart breaking. "Stay with me," she sobbed, her sigil cooling, the nun's laughter fading. The heart was wounded, but the gate was still open, and Benedict's sacrifice loomed, the pure soul's choice a fire that would consume them, or set them free. The crypt of St. Etheldra's convent was a charnel house of shadow and despair, its tombs weeping dust as the heart of Asmodeus pulsed, cracked but defiant, on its blood-soaked altar. Sister Agnes knelt beside Father Benedict, her hands pressed to his side, blood seeping through her fingers, his breath shallow and ragged. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal lay beside her, their pages heavy with the prophecy that haunted her, the beloved's blood seals the chain. The red-robed acolytes of the Order of the Serpent had fled, Mother Superior vanishing into the dark, but the red-habited nun's laughter echoed, a venomous promise that the gate to Asmodeus was widening. Agnes's serpent sigil throbbed, its heat a tether to the demon, a heart torn between love and duty as Benedict's life ebbed. "Stay with me," Agnes sobbed, her voice breaking, tearing her habit to bind his wound, her hands slick with his blood. The cross she'd carved into the heart had weakened it, but its beat surged, mocking her efforts. Benedict's eyes fluttered, his face pale, his hand gripping hers. "You can do this," he whispered, his voice faint but fierce. "Finish it, Agnes. For us." His silver cross lay beside him, dim but warm, a symbol of the faith they both betrayed with their love. Agnes's tears fell, the Liber Asmodeus words burning in her mind. Benedict's blood, his sacrifice, was the key to sealing the gate. But she refused to lose him, her love a rebellion against Asmodeus's trap. She grabbed the journal, its pages open to her mother's final note, my heart for hers, my love for her freedom. Eliza had died to protect Agnes, her blood a seal that held Asmodeus for years. Could Agnes do less? A low growl rose from the altar, the heart's cracks glowing red, the air thickening with sulfur. The red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her claws glinting, her voice a seductive hiss, his blood, or yours. Choose, pure soul. Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her. Benedict, lifeless, his blood draining into the heart, the gate closing, Asmodeus banished, but her soul broken, her life empty. The vision shifted, showing her own blood, her death, Benedict's scream echoing as the gate sealed. Both paths led to loss, and Asmodeus fed on her despair. She shook her head, defiance rising. "There's another way," she whispered, grabbing Benedict's cross, its warmth grounding her. She stood, dragging him to his feet, his weight heavy but his will unbroken. "We destroyed a heart together," she said, her voice firm, her love a fire that burned through fear. The crypt shook, stones falling, the heart's pulse roaring. Agnes lunged for the altar, Benedict's dagger in her hand, and stabbed the heart, her blood, mixed with his from her hands, burning the flesh. The heart screamed, splitting further, and the nun roared, her claws slashing Agnes's arm, blood spraying. Benedict chanted, his cross flaring, and the nun recoiled, her form flickering, the heart's pulse faltering. They staggered from the crypt, the altar collapsing, the heart's flames chasing them. As they reached the cloister, Benedict collapsed, his breath fading, and Agnes screamed, her sigil cooling but her heart breaking. The gate was still open, the heart wounded but alive, and Benedict's blood was the price Asmodeus demanded, or her own. The cloister of St. Etheldra's convent was a fog-choked ruin, its stones slick with blood and ash, its arches groaning under the weight of the demon's wrath. Sister Agnes cradled Father Benedict, his body limp, his blood pooling beneath him, his silver cross clutched in her hand, its warmth a fading echo of his life. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal lay beside her, their secrets a cruel riddle, the beloved's blood seals the chain. The crypt's collapse had buried the heart of Asmodeus, but its pulse surged, a distant thunder that shook the earth, the gate to the demon's realm widening in the convent's deepest vault. Agnes's serpent sigil throbbed, its heat a whisper of her role as the pure soul, her love for Benedict a weapon Asmodeus twisted. "You can't die," Agnes whispered, tears streaming, pressing the cross to his chest, her hands trembling as she bandaged his wounds with her torn habit. "I need you, Benedict. We're not done." His eyes fluttered, his breath a faint rasp. "You're enough," he murmured, his hand brushing hers, his love a fire that burned through her guilt. "Finish it, for me." Agnes's heart clenched, the Liber Asmodeus prophecy a noose around her soul. She refused to sacrifice him, her mother's sacrifice, her heart for Agnes's freedom, a guide to another path. She opened the journal, finding a sketch of the Serpent's gate, its arch marked with a cross, sealed by love, not death. "It's not blood," she whispered, hope flickering. "It's will, our will." A roar shook the cloister, the fog parting to reveal the gate's vault, its stone arch glowing red, a horned shadow forming within, Asmodeus's presence a crushing weight. The red-habited nun appeared, her claws glinting, her voice a seductive purr. "His blood, or yours?" The gate hungers, Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, her mother, sealing the gate with a cross, her love for Agnes the flame that burned Asmodeus back, her death the price of defiance. Agnes stood, dragging Benedict to his feet, his weight a burden she'd carry forever. "We close it together," she said, her voice firm, her love a rebellion against the demon's trap. They staggered toward the vault, the Liber Asmodeus in her arms, its pages open to a final warning. The gate closes with the vessel's heart, but the beloved's faith lights the way. The vault was a furnace of shadow and flame, the gate's arch rippling like water, the horned shadow solidifying, its eyes burning red. Mother Superior stood before it, a new chalice in her hands, its blood dripping into the arch, her acolytes chanting, their voices a drone that shook the earth. "You're too late," she said, her smile cold, her eyes glowing with Asmodeus's power. Agnes raised Benedict's cross, her sigil flaring, and carved a cross into the arch, her blood burning the stone. The gate screamed, the shadow recoiling, and the acolytes staggered, their chants faltering. Mother Superior lunged, her dagger slashing Agnes's arm, but Benedict's prayer, weak but fierce, cut through, his cross flaring, and the nun hissed, her form destabilizing. The vault shook, stones falling, the gate's glow dimming but not fading. Agnes supported Benedict, his blood staining her habit, and knew the gate was weakening, that the heart still beat, and their love was the key, or the trap. The vault beneath St. Etheldra's convent was a crucible of fire and shadow, the Serpent's gate pulsing, its rippling arch a portal to Asmodeus's realm, the horned shadow within growing stronger. Sister Agnes stood before it, Father Benedict leaning against her, his blood seeping, his breath a faint rasp, his silver cross in her hand, its glow a fragile hope. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal were at her feet, their secrets a guide to closing the gate, but the prophecy, the beloved's faith lights the way, was a riddle that demanded everything. Mother Superior circled them, her chalice gone but her dagger glinting, her eyes glowing with demonic fervor, her acolytes fallen but her will unbroken. The red-habited nun loomed, her claws dripping ichor, her voice a seductive hiss, "Give me your heart, and spare him." Agnes's serpent sigil burned, her love for Benedict a fire that Asmodeus sought to consume. "You can't win," Mother Superior said, her voice a chorus of malice, her dagger raised. The gate opens, and Asmodeus claims his bride. Agnes's heart pounded, her mother's sacrifice, sealing the gate with love, a beacon in the dark. "I'm no one's bride," she said, her voice steady, raising Benedict's cross, its warmth fueling her defiance. She carved deeper into the arched cross, her blood mixing with Benedict's, the stone burning, the gate's glow flickering. Benedict's hand gripped hers, his voice a whisper. Together, his prayer resumed, faint but fierce, and the cross flared, its light cutting through the vault's gloom. The red-habited nun screamed, her form splitting, her claws slashing the air, but Agnes held firm, her sigil pulsing in rhythm with Benedict's heartbeat. Mother Superior lunged, her dagger aimed at Agnes's heart, but Benedict shoved her back, his strength fading, blood pouring from his side. He collapsed, his cross falling, and Agnes screamed, catching him, her tears mixing with his blood. The Liber Asmodeus fell open, its final page glowing, the vessel's heart and the beloved's faith burn as one, sealing the serpent's chain. Agnes's breath caught. Love, not death, was the key, but Asmodeus's gambit twisted it, demanding a price. The gate roared, the horned shadow lunging, its claws grazing Agnes's mind, Asmodeus's voice tempting, take his place, and he lives. She saw a vision, herself, consumed by the gate, Benedict alive but broken, the world safe. Then another, Benedict's death, her survival, her soul shattered. Both were traps, and Asmodeus fed on her doubt. Agnes stood, dragging Benedict to the arch, his cross in her hand, her blood burning. We choose each other, she said, her voice a roar, carving the cross deeper, their blood sealing it. The gate screamed, the shadow dissolving, the nun's form collapsing into ash, and Mother Superior fell, her eyes dimming, her body convulsing as Asmodeus's power left her. The vault shook, the arch cracking, the gate's glow fading. Agnes held Benedict, his breath fading, and whispered, I love you, her heart burning with faith and defiance. The heart's pulse stopped, the gate sealed, but Benedict's eyes closed, his hand limp, and Agnes screamed, her victory a pyre that consumed her beloved, or so she feared. The vault beneath St. Etheldra's convent was a crumbling tomb, its stone arch, the Serpent's gate, cracked and dim, sealed by the blood and faith of Sister Agnes and Father Benedict. Agnes knelt beside Benedict, his body limp, his blood pooling on the stone, his silver cross clutched in her hand, its glow faded but warm. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal lay beside her, their secrets fulfilled, the heart of Asmodeus silenced, the red-habited nun's ashes scattered, Mother Superior's lifeless form sprawled nearby, her eyes empty, her power broken. Agnes's serpent sigil cooled, its heat a fading echo, but her heart shattered, Benedict's sacrifice a wound that bled her soul. The gate was closed, but at what cost? Benedict, please, Agnes sobbed, her voice raw, pressing the cross to his chest, her hand slick with his blood. She tore her habit, binding his wounds, her prayers a desperate chant, Lord, spare him. His breath was gone, his hand limp, but his love lingered, a fire that burned through her despair. The vault was silent, the air heavy with ash and blood, but a faint pulse stirred, not Asmodeus's, but Benedict's, weak and faltering. Agnes gasped, hope flaring, her fingers finding his wrist, his heartbeat a fragile thread. You're alive, she whispered, tears falling, her sigil tingling as if answering his life. She dragged him to his feet, his weight a burden she'd carry forever, and staggered toward the vault's exit, the journal and book tucked under her arm. The cloister above was a fog-choked ruin, its stones scarred by battle, Clara's body gone, taken by the order or lost in the chaos. Agnes's heart clenched, Clara's redemption a bittersweet memory, her betrayal forgiven but not forgotten. She laid Benedict on the stones, his breath shallow, and searched the journal for guidance, finding a final note, the gate closes with love, but the vessel's heart carries the scar. Her mother had died to protect her, but Agnes had chosen life, for herself, for Benedict. A shadow moved in the fog, not an acolyte but something else, formless, flickering, the red-habited nun's essence, her voice a whisper, you've won nothing. Agnes's sigil flared, and a vision gripped her, the heart, buried in the vault's rubble, cracking open, a sliver of Asmodeus's power escaping, seeking a new vessel. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, her hope tainted by dread. The gate was sealed, but the demon's seed remained, and her bloodline was its target. She bandaged Benedict's wounds, her hands trembling, and whispered, we'll leave this place together. But the fog thickened, footsteps echoing, surviving acolytes, or something worse. Agnes grabbed Benedict's cross, her sigil burning, and prepared to fight, her love a defiance that Asmodeus could never break. The convent was a prison, but she'd burn it down before losing Benedict again. The cloister of St. Etheldra's convent was a graveyard of fog and stone, its arches crumbling, its air thick with the scent of blood and ash. Sister Agnes supported Father Benedict, his body weak but alive, his breath a faint rasp, his blood staining her torn habit. The Liber Asmodeus and her mother's journal were tucked under her arm, their secrets a heavy burden, the sealed Serpent's gate a fragile victory. Agnes's Serpent sigil tingled, a warning that Asmodeus's power lingered. The red-habited nuns whisper a venomous echo in the fog, "I am not gone." The convent was no longer a sanctuary, it was a trap, and the order's remnants hunted them. "We need to get out," Agnes said, her voice hoarse, her eyes scanning the fog for shadows. Benedict's weight was heavy, but her love gave her strength, his cross in her hand a beacon of hope. He nodded, his voice faint. "The gate, by the forest," he murmured, his hand gripping hers, his faith a fire that burned through his pain. "It's our only chance." They staggered toward the convent's outer gate, the fog parting to reveal blooded stones and broken crosses, the remnants of their war with the order. Agnes's heart pounded, Clara's absence a wound, a sacrifice a light in the dark. The Liber Asmodeus' final warning, "The vessel's heart carries the scar," echoed, a reminder that her bloodline was Asmodeus's tether, her victory incomplete. The gate loomed, its iron bars rusted but intact, the blackwood forest beyond a maze of thorns and whispers. Agnes pushed it open, the hinges screaming, and they slipped into the trees, the fog swallowing their footsteps. But the forest was alive, branches snapping, shadows moving, acolytes, or something worse, their chants a low drone that stirred her sigil. They reached a clearing, the ruined chapel from their earlier refuge visible, its altar cracked, its crosses bleeding ash. Agnes laid Benedict against a tree, his breath shallow, and searched the journal, finding a sketch of a hidden path through the forest, marked by her mother, "To freedom, for my daughter." Hope flared, but the chants grew louder, and a figure emerged, Sister Ruth, her eyes glowing, her habit dripping blood, her voice layered with Asmodeus's malice, "You cannot flee the serpent." Agnes raised Benedict's cross, her sigil flaring, and chanted a prayer, her voice trembling but fierce. Ruth lunged, her dagger flashing, but Agnes dodged, the cross burning Ruth's skin, her scream echoing. The acolytes surged, their blades a blur, and Agnes fought, her love for Benedict a fire that burned through fear. She slashed with a stolen dagger, blood spraying, and pulled Benedict to his feet, running deeper into the forest, the path her mother marked their only hope. The chants faded, but Ruth's laughter lingered, blending with the red-habited nuns. Agnes's sigil burned, and a vision gripped her, the heart, stirring in the vault's rubble, a new vessel forming, her unborn child, conceived in her love for Benedict. The vision faded, leaving Agnes gasping, her hand on her stomach, her victory a curse that bound her bloodline forever. The blackwood forest was a labyrinth of shadow and thorn, its fog a shroud that hid Sister Agnes and Father Benedict as they followed the path marked in her mother's journal. Benedict leaned on Agnes, his wounds bandaged but bleeding, his breath a fragile thread, his silver cross in her hand, its glow a faint beacon. The Liber Asmodeus and journal weighed heavy, their secrets a guide to freedom, or a trap. Agnes's serpent sigil pulsed, a warning that Asmodeus's power lingered, the red-habited nun's laughter a whisper in the trees, the vision of her unborn child a curse that chilled her soul. The Order's acolytes hunted them, their chants echoing, Sister Ruth's glowing eyes a relentless threat. "We're close," Agnes said, her voice steady despite her fear. The journal's path leading to a clearing marked with a stone cross, its base carved with her mother's name, Eliza. "She left this for me." Benedict nodded, his voice faint. "Your mother, she's with us," he murmured, his hand gripping hers, his faith a lifeline. But his strength faded, his blood staining the earth, and Agnes's heart clenched. The Liber Asmodeus prophecy, the beloved's blood seals the chain, a shadow over their love. The clearing was a sanctuary, its cross glowing faintly, the air free of sulfur but heavy with belladonna's scent. Agnes laid Benedict on the grass, his breath shallow, and opened the Liber Asmodeus, finding a final ritual, the vessel's heart and the beloved's faith cast out the serpent, but the bloodline carries the mark. An exorcism, not of a person but of her bloodline, to sever Asmodeus's hold. Her unborn child, conceived in sin, born of love, was the new vessel, and only her will could free it. She knelt, Benedict's cross in her hands, and began the ritual, her voice a chant, Exorcismus te, Asmodeus, omnis immunda spiritus, her sigil flared, burning, and the cross glowed, its light cutting through the fog. Benedict joined her, his voice weak but fierce, their faith a fire that burned through the demon's grip. The clearing shook, the cross flaring, and the red-habited nun appeared, her form solid, her claws slashing the air, her scream a storm, "You cannot banish me." Agnes's vision blurred, a memory surging, her mother, performing this same ritual, her blood burning as she severed the bloodline's curse, her death the price. Agnes's sigil cracked, blood seeping from her wrist, and she carved a cross into her skin, her blood mixing with Benedict's, their love sealing the ritual. The nun roared, her form dissolving into ash, and the forest stilled, the chants fading, Ruth's laughter gone. Benedict collapsed, his breath stopping, and Agnes screamed, her sigil cold, the cross dim. She pressed her hands to his chest, her tears falling, her love a prayer, "Come back to me." His heartbeat flickered, weak but alive, and the fog parted, the path to freedom clear. But the journal's final warning lingered, the bloodline carries the mark. Her child was safe, for now, but Asmodeus's shadow remained, a scar she'd bear forever. The dawn broke over the blackwood forest, its light piercing the fog, casting long shadows across the stone cross where Sister Agnes and Father Benedict rested, their bodies bloodied but alive. The Liber Asmodeus was burned, its ashes scattered, her mother's journal buried beneath the cross, a final offering to Eliza's sacrifice. Agnes's serpent sigil was a faint scar, its power broken by the exorcism, her bloodline freed from Asmodeus's grip, or so she prayed. Benedict's wounds were bandaged, his breath steady, his silver cross around her neck, a symbol of their love and faith. St. Etheldra's convent loomed in the distance, its spires silent, the Order of the Serpent shattered, Mother Superior dead, the Serpent's gate sealed, the heart of Asmodeus destroyed. But the red-habited nun's whisper lingered, a faint echo in Agnes's mind, a warning that the demon's shadow was never truly gone. "We did it," Benedict said, his voice weak but warm, his hand in hers, his eyes reflecting the dawn. "You saved us, Agnes." She shook her head, tears falling. "We saved each other," she said, her voice soft, her love a fire that burned through her vows. She touched her stomach, the vision of her unborn child, conceived in their forbidden love, a light and a burden. But it's not over. Not for her. Benedict's hand covered hers, his faith unwavering. "We'll protect her," he said, his voice firm. "Together." They rose, leaning on each other, and followed the path her mother marked. It ended a dirt road where a battered taxi waited, a stranger's kindness or a miracle. The driver didn't ask questions, his eyes avoiding their blooded clothes, and they climbed in, the convent fading behind them, its secrets buried but not forgotten. Agnes's hand rested on Benedict's, the cross warm against her skin, her heart scarred but whole. The taxi wound through the forest, the dawn's light growing stronger, but a chill lingered, the scent of belladonna faint in the air. Agnes's scar tingled, and a whisper, not Asmodeus's, but her own fear, curled in her mind. What if he returns? She pushed it away, her love for Benedict, her faith in their child, a shield against the dark. Months later, in a small village far from the convent, Agnes, no longer Sister Agnes, stood in a modest church, her habit gone, her hair loose, her belly swollen with life. Benedict, no longer Father Benedict, stood beside her, his wounds healed, his faith reshaped by love. They exchanged vows, their rings simple but heavy with meaning, their child a promise of hope. The congregation smiled, unaware of the scars they carried, the demon they banished. But as they kissed, Agnes's scar tingled, and a shadow moved at the church's edge, not the red-habited nun, but a girl, pale and silent, her eyes glowing faintly red. She vanished, and Agnes gasped, her hand on her stomach, her child kicking, a reminder of her bloodline's mark. Benedict's arm steadied her, his love a fire that burned through fear, but the whisper returned, soft and eternal, I wait. The church bells rang, drowning the whisper, but Agnes knew, Asmodeus was gone, but his shadow lingered, a scar on her soul, a promise that her child would face the serpent one day. She held Benedict's hand, her heart defiant, and stepped into the light, ready to fight for her family, forever haunted by the Cloister of Secrets.